Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting of the Northampton City Council and the City Council Committee on Finance. This is a continuation of the public hearing on the fiscal year 2026 budget. This meeting and all participating in person and on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. And the meeting can also be watched on Comcast Channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media's YouTube channel. I will now call the City Council to order. And Laura, could you give us a roll?
Sure. Councillor Dubs.
Here.
Councillor Elkins.
Here.
Councillor Jarrett.
Here.
Councillor Clemmer.
Here.
Councillor Labarge.
Here.
Councillor Maori.
Here.
Councillor Moulton.
Here.
Councillor Perry.
Here.
And Councillor Rothenberg.
Here.
Council President, you have a quorum.
We will now recess for the Finance Committee, and I'll turn it over to Finance Chair Maori.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Let's do a roll call for the Finance Committee.
Sure. Councillor Maori.
Here.
Councillor Moulton.
Here.
Councillor Elkins.
Here.
Okay. Councillor Labarge.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Great. I think it's been announced, but you're just a reminder that you're being audio and video recorded if you're taking part in the meeting. So I'm going to call to order the continuation of the public hearing on the FY 2026 budget. We are continuing tonight's hearing in accordance with the City Charter for Northampton, Article 7, Section 4. The City Council Committee on Finance will consider the proposed FY 2026 budget and hear all persons who wish to be heard. So like the first night of budget hearings, each department will give their presentation. And during that time, Finance Committee members can ask clarifying questions only. I would like to save substantive questions for after the public comment period. And so when the presentation is done by the department head, there will be a public testimony and question period. While members of the public can make any comments related to the budget, I encourage everyone to share your comment as much as possible with the appropriate department. We're going to stop after each department and have a time for the public to weigh in and ask questions. Councillor Moulton will gather and track the questions from the public. So please direct your questions to the council, and we will relay them after the public comment period back to the appropriate city staff. After the public comment, we'll go to councilors. A reminder that councilors who don't serve on the Finance Committee are guests of the committee, so cannot make motions and such. We will have one round of comments and questions from those councilors. And yes, tonight we'll be hearing from Fire and Rescue, the Police Department, the Department of Public Works, Central Services, and the Climate Action and Project Administration Department. And finally, just a reminder that we are all in community together, and democracy means nothing without public engagement. So thanks to everyone, department heads, counselors, and the public for being here tonight. Okay, so we don't need to open the public hearing because it's continued, so I believe we can just get started with our first presentation, which will be with our Fire and Rescue Chief Pellis. Okay, there you are. Hi, good evening. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, Finance Committee, Mayor Sierra, Finance Director Nardi, city councilors, and the public. Thank you for the opportunity to present the proposed FY 26 budget for our department. Our department responds to a wide range of emergencies in our community, including fires, motor vehicle accidents, medical emergencies, hazardous materials incidents, technical rescues, and water emergencies. We also perform important non-emergency services such as fire prevention inspections in homes and businesses, and we provide fire safety education to both students in the Northampton schools and older adults in our community. In the past year, we responded to a total of 9,072 fire and EMS calls, with 7,380 of those being EMS related. Among our EMS responses, 414 were mutual aid responses to other neighboring communities. We also experienced 112 instances when all of our ambulances were tied up requiring assistance from other agencies. This marks another record year for call volume, and it continues to stretch our staffing model to its limits. If you look at the screen here is a graph of our call volumes within the last 10 years. And as you can see, other than the COVID year of 2020, we've consistently increased on call volume. There's several factors contributing to this sustained increase in demand. The ongoing mental health crisis, a growing unhoused population, limited access to primary care and primary care physicians, and a regional shortage of EMS providers in the area. As I stated last year, this level of demand is taking its toll on our personnel physically and mentally. In response, we've had ongoing discussions with the mayor and the finance director to identify sustainable solutions. Moving forward, we are proposing to increase our staffing by 2 firefighters per shift for a total of 8 personnel, allowing us to more effectively handle the increased call volumes. The increase in personnel services line of the FY 2026 budget reflects the hiring of these 8 new firefighters starting in October of 2025. If our SAFER grant application is successful, these funds will be returned to the general fund at the end of FY 2026. However, the city will need to cover the cost of these positions after the 3 years. On the operation and maintenance side, we have a few small increases in EMS supplies and equipment. In 2023, we responded to 6,670 EMS calls, and in 2024, that number increased by 10.7% to 7,380 calls. This increase directly impacts the cost of our EMS supplies and our equipment. EMS supplies, which is the IV kits, medications, our tools, trauma supplies, are used on nearly every EMS call. Due to the increase of over 700 calls, we are requesting an increase from 85,000 to 93,500 to ensure adequate inventory. Our EMS equipment line item, which is defibrillators, suction units, public access AEDs, face greater wear from higher call volumes. We are requesting an increase from 83,137 to 91,000 to maintain functionality, safety, and readiness. These increases are critical to sustaining our operational readiness and delivering high-quality care to our community. In conclusion, FY 26 budget represents a thoughtful and necessary investment in our department's capacity to meet rising demands. We have worked closely with the mayor and the finance director to keep increase both minimal and responsible. These investments are partially offset by ambulance billing revenue. For FY 25, ambulance services are projected to generate $3,818,255 in revenue, with an additional $236,552 from Medicaid reimbursement. If trends hold, this reflects a projected increase of over $342,811 over FY 24. Thank you for your time and your continued support, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. I know the last time you had questions that was asked in the last meeting. Do we want to answer those now and then wait, do public comment after that, or do you want to?
Why don't we let's do public comment because we're going to make a list of any comment questions from there, and then we can consolidate.
Okay.
So we will go to public comments. We're looking for public comments, especially on the fire and rescue department or budget. I'm going to look. If you're in the room, I would say just raise your hand because did we put out a sheet? Yeah. We did. Okay. And then if you're on Zoom, you can raise your virtual hand. And if not, we can just, counselors, we could go right into those questions. Let me just check once. Okay. Okay, yeah. Why don't you just go into those questions and then counselors can have their
Sure.
questions.
So Counselor Moulton had said he was interested in the plan to hire 8 new firefighters and is happy that money is budgeted. He wants to know if the hiring starts before or after October and wants clarification. So to explain that, so we are applying for our SAFER grant, which is out now. So we're actively applying for that grant. The process, the application needs to be in, and if I speak on this, by July 1st, I believe, and we will know on the award by October. So that's why this October number is in here. What we plan on doing is start the process of hiring prior to October. And then once we receive, whether or not we receive the award or for how many we receive the award, then we will quickly move forward at that point. So we'll probably start the process in August. He also had a question of what happens if the FEMA grant is awarded for all 8 positions. Any surplus PS would roll into free cash at the end of the year. While it would be wonderful if we were granted all 8 positions, that we apply for, it's possible that we will not receive funding for all 8. Counselor Rothenberg, you had a question if it'll increase revenue. Having the ability to staff a 4th ambulance will reduce reliance on mutual aid and increase Northampton Fire Rescue's capacity to respond to calls. Potentially recovering an estimated $238,280 in lost revenue from the 112 missed calls, EMS calls last year, based on a 50-50 split between ALS and BLS transport rates. However, it's somewhat difficult to predict something that's completely dependent on our call volume and patient insurance and stuff. But it, realistically, it should increase. Do you ever have to bring your supplies to work? No. Northampton Fire Rescue provides all necessary operational supplies, uniforms, and personal protective equipment required for duty. While some members may choose to bring personal tools or items for convenience, it is not due to any lack of departmental resources. Have you ever worked unpaid? I am a salaried employee. I do not receive any extra compensation when I'm working outside of my normal working hours. Have we ever had staff cuts? While there have been no formal layoffs in my career, I have seen significant reductions in minimum staffing, dropping to a low of 8 per shift in 2005-2006 timeframe due to financial hardships in the city. In order to combat these challenges, we established an ambulance service starting with 1 ambulance and have grown that service over the last 2 decades to where we are today. Have we lost positions through attrition? Yes. Over the years, we have lost positions due to retirements and resignations that were not immediately replaced. Some of these positions were held vacant for extended periods due to budgetary constraints, limiting our ability to maintain safe staffing levels at all times. I think, what did you ask for this budget season that you didn't get? While we can always use more, we plan our budget to stay within the parameters set by the mayor and the finance director. Prior to developing our FY26 budget, we met with the mayor and finance director discussing how to best handle the increased volume and need for more staff. We worked diligently to craft our budget to ensure that we are fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money, while still being able to provide the level of service that people expect. And I believe that was all of the questions that were asked that night. I don't know if anybody else has further questions.
Actually, there's a member of the public. I was too fast to move on. So why don't we go to that member of the public and then we can go to counselors? Is that okay, counselors? Okay. Meg Robbins, oops. Unmute, where are you? Okay. Hi, Meg.
Hi, and thank
Hi.
you. And Chief, I just want to say that I always appreciate when my smoke alarm comes off and you guys show up. I'm very grateful for all of that. I am curious about whether the Medicaid reimbursements that fire and safety get go straight to fire and safety, or do they come back to you through the general fund? Thank you.
Why don't we, well, why don't you go ahead and answer that one? If we had a whole list, say,
Do you want to answer that, Cheryl?
like to answer that one and then we can.
So those funds go to the general fund. They support the entire budget.
Thank you, Director. Okay. Counselors, do you have any further questions for the chief? Any counselors? Yeah.
Well, no, can we go to the finance committee first, please?
Didn't see a hand. That's good.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Chief, thanks for answering all those questions from several weeks ago. And I just want to clarify on these is FEMA grants, correct?
Correct.
Would they cover benefits in addition to salaries? Would they cover the full cost of bringing on X number of new firefighters?
So I'm the lucky one. I'm the one who gets to fill out all the grant paperwork. So I've read through all of this. So that would cover the entire cost of their salary and regular overtime, not excluding normal duties or normal overtime for the first 3 years. And what it would be is 25, 25, 65. So the first year, Northampton would be responsible for 25%. So let's just, to use simple numbers, $100,000 firefighter, we'd have to pay $25,000. The second year, 25,000, and the third year, 65,000. To be in year 4, we would completely take over those salaries.
So that 25% is of the base salary plus some overtime? Did I?
That's the base salary and benefits.
Base salary and benefits. Okay. So, and it escalates as the.
Correct. It's almost a step up into a full salary.
Okay. And do you, you say you're going to start the hiring process in August. So do you anticipate then having 8 firefighters ready to bring on in October, whether it's grant funded or city funded?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. So that would be for the last 10 months of the fiscal year then.
Correct.
Thank you. Thanks.
Counselor Rothenberg, sorry, Counselor Labarge.
I want to thank you and all your staff for everything you do. The only question I have, because I know exactly what goes on with your financing, is like your maintenance who takes care of the fire trucks and so forth. I'm sorry, no, that's okay. How frequently do you need maintenance on that type of equipment?
He's very busy. He's working on stuff every day. Yeah, we have a lot of equipment and gets a lot of use. So not only does he do PM on everything, which is preventive maintenance, he's also constantly doing things to fix our apparatus.
Also too, with the 8 new firefighters, what about with, say, when you have calls coming from dispatch? Are one of these firefighters also involved in that with dispatch?
Nope, dispatch is separate. Public.
Just separately?
Yes, they're
Just call
separate
right
from-
into it? Okay, how many calls do you actually get, say, from community care in regards of any kind of help or anything like that?
That would be a question for dispatch, because they're the ones that receive the calls. We don't necessarily know where the calls are coming from and who they're coming from. So that would be a call for dispatch.
Okay, well, thank you all for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Oh, I see.
I think you're muted, Counselor Maori.
I'm muted?
There we go.
Oh, sorry, Counselor Elkins.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you, Chief Pellis. I especially appreciate your brevity tonight. But it was an informative presentation. I wonder if you could speak to, I know some amount of the supplies, kind of sort of department-wide supplies, things like hoses and safety gear and things like that are funded through the capital improvement projects plan. And I'm not trying to catch you, by surprise here, but could you speak a little bit to how especially the recurring things like the replacement of hoses and things like that? If you could just tell us a
Yeah,
little bit,
so-
what you're
yeah,
thinking
so
about,
like-
like how that comes out of the SIP versus as a part of
Right.
this budget. Thank
So
you.
what we try to do with the SIP is do projects that are not necessarily that recurring. It's more of a long-term, like hoses, we don't replace that often. We tend to try to get at least 10 years out of our hoses. We've recently just gone through kind of an overhaul of our hoses. So that's why we've had a lot of purchases of hoses lately. As far as other equipment for capital improvement, it's more bigger projects, like more expensive, bigger projects that we like to take on with the capital improvement that we couldn't necessarily afford in our budget. Our budget, as far as medical supplies, that's a really big one. And I can have Division Chief of EMS, Bill Millen, explain kind of how we break down the EMS equipment in our actual budget, if you wouldn't mind.
So just going back to the breakdown between the capital and the regular expenses, for example, this year in capital, we put forward for 3 new stretchers, 3 power loads, the device that lifts the stretcher into the back of the ambulance, and then 5 stair chairs. And I believe the cost on that was about 280,000. So any of the major, larger items we would put through and group them together and put it forward for capital. The regular supplies and equipment, for example, equipment, I'm taking some money out of there to replace our AEDs, 1, 2 at a time, as opposed to one capital expense, just when I have some free money available. Regularly, that's coming, anything that breaks is coming out of supplies. If a suction unit or another device broke during the middle of the year, I would use that for equipment. Supplies would be my day-to-day gloves, bandages, stuff like that. I'm pretty much ordering weekly. 10, 12 boxes at a time, stuff like that I would take out of supplies. Does that answer your question on that one? Perfect.
Chief, do you have any firefighters that are on medical leave or either have retired recently? And also, I'd like to know if you have any of them on a leave of absence.
So currently, I believe we right now have 2 people on a leave of absence, a medical leave. Throughout the year, we have had more than that, but we've recently gotten 3 people back. So right now, we have 2 that's on medical leave.
One's coming back next week.
And 1 comes back next week, which is good.
Okay, I have a question. I think Council Rothenberg and I see President Jarrett. My question was, how is it looking this year in terms of recruitment? I know that there was some difficulty in hiring, especially paramedics last time we spoke last year. And what's the outlook now?
So we're in the process of hiring 5 at this time because we're short for our normal staffing. We just went through the process and we've gotten some really what we think are qualified candidates. There's 1 paramedic, which is one potential paramedic, and then there's some others that are EMT. Some are enrolled in programs already, and some are not. So, whereas in the past we were hiring only paramedics, as you know now, we need to hire. If there's no paramedics available, we hire basics with the understanding that they will work towards getting their paramedic license. But that takes up to 3 years to get your license. So it takes time. But, we've had a pretty good round of interviews and stuff, so we'll be making decisions shortly on who we're going to hire, and we think there's some quality candidates there.
Right. So you feel you can fill those roles with the funding?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Rothenberg and then Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you. I just have a few to follow up on that question. Can you speak at all to whether our wages are competitive in the region?
So I can, speak on, I think we're competitive with some, and then there are some in our around surrounding areas that may be a little bit more. It's kind of sometimes hard to tell, but I think, we compete with some of them and then some that were a little bit less than.
And related to that, do we know when Director Nardi wants to answer questions about the personnel reserve? Or does she want to do that by each department, or do we have a?
No, I think we'll do that later.
Okay. And then my last question, which I just want to preface by a statement of gratitude, because of course, Ward 3 is very appreciative to fire, and Ward 3 is an area that's of course been scarred by fire. And we think so much of you. And the question about whether you ever work for free is really for your whole department. And we hope, of course, the answer is no.
Right. So I actually did have, I don't know how I missed that. I think I did answer that. Oh, yeah.
You gave me the answer in regards to yourself as a salary.
Yes. So all our personnel are paid in accordance with union contracts and city policy for scheduled shifts and approved overtime. However, many members frequently donate their time for community events and committees and trainings without seeking compensation. But to answer your question, they do normally get paid in accordance with their contract.
Thank you so much, Director Pelis.
Councilor Jarrett, do you have a question?
Councilor Rothenberg asked my question.
Oh, excellent. Very efficient. Okay, just check for Councilor Perry. Any other questions from councilors for the chief? Oh, yes.
Yes, thanks. So I have a couple of questions from a constituent who was not able to be here, and I want to make sure that I understand. I think you answered some. We're with the additional 8 firefighters. We would move from 13 to 15 per shift.
Correct.
And that's 4 shifts, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you explained some additional EMS supplies and equipment, but this does not necessitate buying any new vehicles.
No.
Right? You mentioned staffing a 4th ambulance, which the fire department, fire rescue already has.
Yes.
Okay. And your expectation is that this is going to reduce the Northampton's reliance on mutual aid from other communities.
Correct.
Somewhat, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you give us an estimate of what it costs for the training and a full year of salary benefits for a firefighter, a new firefighter?
So I believe, Charlene, you have that number, don't you? I have last year's.
87 and insurance is about 17.
What's the number?
75.
So he looked it up and it's 75,000.
75,000. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for all you guys are doing. And that's a tough job. So when the medics come, they train for 3 years, and that's including the schooling. And then do they need like practical hours?
Yes, they'll do their practical hours during while they're still in the program. They go to different departments and do ride time and get their practice and skills down. And all of that takes around 3 years.
And is that part of their daily shift, or do they have to come in on days off and
Do that, would do that on their days off.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chief. I think that's it. Thanks for joining. Oh, sure.
Sorry about this. I just wonder, could you expand off the top of your head a little bit on when we asked you about what you had asked for that you didn't get?
Yeah.
You said, of course, we would always want more things, but we work hard to stay within. What are some of like the very next priority things you really, or people that you really wish you had?
So staffing is our big one. Like we've been presenting for a few years now as far as our staffing levels needing to be increased just to handle the demands. So that's why, we've kind of worked 2 years to try to, at least 2 years, we've been working to try to get to the point where we can increase our our staffing so we can increase the call volume. That's really the big thing in our budget that we really needed to increase. We could certainly always increase certain line items as far as being able to purchase more equipment and stuff, but we have I feel like a pretty good handle on our stuff at this point, where we've been fortunate that we've been able to work within our budget and get some equipment that we value and we feel like we need. So I really feel like our budget is, we're careful with our budget, but we also, I feel like we've been fortunate enough to get a lot of the stuff that we request or want.
And did I understand you correctly to be saying that the staffing is now at the level that you're happy with, or will be if you hire?
Well, this is proposed.
Yeah.
If this goes through, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I see Councilor Perry. Councilor Labarge, did you have your hand up? Okay, Councilor Labarge, and then we'll go to Councilor Perry.
I do know that I have seen you down the Alps. Can you explain what you did down there, because it was amazing?
The speed?
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Like a training period, like if there's a fire at a house or anything like that.
Which, I'm trying to think of was that when our ladder was at the, I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Because I saw you there.
Was it during the Rotary Club or the Rotary?
No, not our Rotary. I know you were at the Rotary because I belong to that also.
Right.
But I know that the fire department was down at the Elks in the parking lot.
So they did, so that was, I think it was that, I believe, I was not personally there.
Okay.
But I know that was during, believe that was during the vehicle night. And
Yes.
they had a ladder there and they were demonstrating how the aerial works. and
Exactly.
Stuff like that.
I mean, that stuff is very, very helpful, because one other time we had them, you were not the chief then, and they actually had like a trailer and showing if there was a fire and so forth to educate the public.
Right.
It was excellent.
Yeah.
So
That's what
I think that's
during-
very good for the community to be able to see exactly what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Council.
Sure. Can you unmute?
Thank you, Chief. I just have a question along the lines of staffing as well. I know we talked about some wages, but I think it's a two-part thing. One, in terms of recruitment, I'm just wondering what the landscape is right now for hiring. I see that you said that now you're just looking for basics to bring in and then train. And then that kind of leads to my next question is, when folks have to do training, are we paying for the training? Is there a way to retain folks? Is there a commitment there for those new hires who have to, spend those 3 years?
Sure. So when they're with us, we support them throughout their training. We give them time off to go to their classes throughout the 3 years that they're in class. We currently don't pay for their class. but we support them, give them time off when they need to for a class. Does that answer your question?
The second part, and then the first part is really just a question about the landscape of hiring.
Yeah, it's so the hiring is completely changed from before COVID. It seems like after COVID is kind of when the landscape changed. All departments throughout the state are struggling finding paramedics. There's a lack of paramedics in the area. I feel like it's slowly picking up again. I don't know for sure, but I think possibly one of the reasons is during COVID, there was a real fear out there and a panic to be in the medical field and people not knowing what this virus was really like. So I feel like a lot of people shied away from paramedicine and medicine in general. And I feel like we're slowly starting to get back, but it takes time. Because currently there's not a lot of paramedics throughout the state. But I feel like, the classes are full now, and I feel like in the future, it'll slowly trickle back to where we'll be having more paramedics available to us in the future.
Perfect. That answers my question. I was wondering if we're not the only place that is looking.
Yeah, we are not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions before we let the chief go? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now we're up to our police department. Chief Cartledge, welcome.
Counselors, Mayor, Finance Director, thank you for having me this evening. So I'd like to just start out with some of the highlights that the police department has done over the last year. First, I was officially sworn in as the new police chief, so I just wanted to put that out there. Our police department collaborated with dispatch and the Department of Community Care to create protocols for dispatching appropriate calls to the Division of Community Care. Our staff attended 6,117 professional development hours of training, including ABLE, which is the duty to intervene, leadership, technical skills, and many other areas for training. Our department received the AAA Bronze Award for outstanding commitment to traffic safety. We continue and we participated in the Restorative Justice Program, which is an alternative to prosecution. There was 12 cases referred and 3 were accepted by the program. We continue to voluntarily submit to the use of force data to the FBI National Database, and we provide open data on our website relative to our daily operations and statistics. We remain under the supervision of POST, the Police Officer Standards and Training Compliance, which entails a lot of reporting to POST, maintaining our certifications, and sending things that are required through the Municipal Training Council and to POST itself. Our records department responded to 2,224 public records requests last year. So that keeps them very busy. I'd like to highlight some of the community events that we participated in last year. The Northampton Safety Night and Bike Rodeo. We did the Northampton Survival Center food drive, Operation Deck the Halls toy drive. Our officers went to Safety Village and led educational programs for the children. We conducted the National Drug Take Back Day collection event at Smith Vocational High School. We participated in the First Responder Ice Bucket Challenge for ALS. We took part in the Memorial Day and Rag Shag parades. Officers were also involved with the annual Santa's Train celebration at Lick Park. A while ago, I started my monthly chat with the chiefs, which have been successful, and I try to do those throughout the city, Florence and Northampton downtown. I've met a lot of good people during those events. And we also joined with the Park and Recreations Department to bring Unity Community Basketball League nights to Northampton. Those are just a few of the events we did last year. So 2024, some of the calls and activities that our department responded to. We had 27,974 calls for service. 478 of those were stacked. So meaning when the call came in, there was not an officer available to respond immediately. So we stacked the call till someone was available, which results in not meeting our call volume, longer response times, officers waiting for backup, and officers not available for traffic enforcement or other types of community needs. We had 483 arrests. There was 497 motor vehicle collisions, and 421 of those were over $1,000 damage or with injury, which are the state requirements for reporting to the registry and your insurance. Our department had 60 OUI liquor or drug cases, which someone is either charged criminally or arrested. There was 2,526 offense reports, which if an officer goes to a call and it's something more significant than they can write on a quick log entry, requires a report. So they did a lot of typing. We had we issued 3,203 motor vehicle citations. There was 207 cases investigated by our detective bureau with an 89.9% case clearance rate. So the detectives get the more serious cases if it requires a ton of follow-up, because our patrol officers we want on the street. So if it's, for example, like a shoplifting case, the patrol officer will take the case and run with it. If it's a more serious crime, we usually will assign it to a detective who can conduct lengthier investigations, just to free up our patrol officers. We had 929 mental health related calls. Out of these, 670, the police officers responded alone because there was a co-responder that was unavailable. There was 239 police responded calls with a co-responder. So in our department, we have the clinicians that we have a grant through with the CSO. So we responded with them to 239 calls, and 20 calls, the co-responder responded alone. I'd just like to highlight some of the staffing challenges and what we call unavailable officers. So we may have a set number of officers on paper, but there's many officers during the year that are out due to military leave, injuries, family leave. If the officer's in field training, they're with a field training officer, so they don't count as a body. It's one, they're one unit until they graduate field training. So for all these reasons, it creates shift vacancies that must be filled by other officers. I know one of the questions you had, Counselor, was how many officers we have on the street, which I get to a little down here, but we do have 4. So there's 4 areas in Northampton. There's 2 Florence and Leeds areas, or 1 for each, and then there's 2 downtown cars. So most times we have 4 patrol area cars and 1 Main Street officer, either on a bike or walking, and 1 station officer. That's our minimal staffing to create safety and for the community and for our officers. There are times we have a traffic car where we try to prioritize getting to traffic related, issues and other things like that. But a typical day is 4 cars and 1 walking or bicycle officer and a station officer. So when there's a shift vacancy, obviously results in forcing an officer to stay longer for a double shift. We will put the overtime out and people can sign it voluntarily if they like to. But a lot of times it's forced and the officer has to cancel their plans, stay for another 8 hours, which isn't ideal, obviously. So from July 2024 to May 2025, we averaged that there was 7 officers who per month who were unavailable to fill shifts due to the reasons I set up top there: military leave, family leave, injuries, stuff like that. That has improved from FY 24, which was an average of 9 people. So it's getting better, but we still have approximately 7 officers who are not available to fill the shifts we need. And like I said a little earlier, our minimum staffing levels must be met for the safety of the community and for our officers. Obviously, if our officers are on a call where it becomes a safety risk, they're going to want additional officers there to help them out. So we have 1 supervisor, 4 patrol areas, 1 Main Street, which is a biker walking officer, and 1 station officer. And I know I've said this before to the council, but there are many calls that require more than 1 officer. Shoplifting, obviously bank robbery, assaultive person, suspicious person. We're going to send at least 2 officers to all those. So that takes up half your staff, half my staff to go to 1 call. If we make an arrest or there's a lengthy investigation, those 2 officers could be out of service for numerous hours. So in that case, we're shorthanded, or we'll call in the next shift who's coming on duty to fill in for them while they're handling this call. Storm related calls, big incidents like that, we always have to look at potentially calling people in early if the people are going to be tied up. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have officer stack. So we created this officer in our system so we can track how many calls are getting stacked when we get a call for service and we do not have an officer to send immediately. So last year there was 478 calls where someone called the police and we could not respond right away. So the next slide here, this is patrol overtime hours for shift coverage. So this is just what I was talking about. This is only for filling shift minimums. This has nothing to do with if an officer's late after a call investigating something, if the detectives are in conducting an investigation. This is merely for shift overtime. And as you can see by the graphs, the purple is forced overtime, and that has significantly decreased with the help of the student officers that were graciously given to us years ago. So the green is we put out overtime, people voluntarily sign it to make extra money. The purple is forced. So as you can see, after December, January, all the way through till now, it's very minimal because with the student officers we hired, they were able to be hired earlier in our process, and we were able to extend them out to help with the shift minimums that we need help with. So I appreciate that very much. This next slide is just shows a different view of the graph. The orange FY24 shift overtime, and with the help of the student officers, the yellow is FY25, significant drop in the shift minimum overtime. So I appreciate everything the council did for our department and allowing us to use the student officers early like that. It's really been helpful. Let's see. So staffing overtime update. Our first group of 4 student officers graduated into the academy in March of 2024. After completing the field training program, they were able to fill vacant patrol positions in July of 24. The next group graduated October of 24, and they were able to fill vacant positions. Like I said, we continue to move student officers through the academy to fill vacancies and project to have 4 in the next academy. As you can see, having student officers is proven to be invaluable to our department because, like I said, it allows us to hire so much earlier and get them in the pipeline. The overtime hours, so average per month FY 23 is 308 forced shift overtimes just to cover the shifts. FY 24, 271, and FY 25 up until last week when we did this, 177. So it's really been so helpful and dropped our shift minimum overtime, which has been awesome. So, what is a student officer? Just we can go through that again. It's a newly hired employee who's not a sworn officer. They must be between 21 and 37 years old, pass the medical exam and physical ability test. They're required to successfully complete 5 months of police academy, and then after graduation, they'll go to a 4 to 5 month field training and evaluation program. Once filled, then they will fill anticipated vacancies. Having student officers does not increase the number of patrol officers. It just simply allows us to start hiring and training them much earlier in the process. And then the next slide, just some of the things that through the years and through interviewing and talking to people at the department, what keeps people here at Northampton PD. It's a vibrant community, bustling downtown, which offers a lot of us residents and visitors many things to do here. There's a commitment to the community from our department. We had interviews today and we had 4 candidates. They all looked at our website, even if they didn't know much about our community. And just from our website, they can tell how dedicated we are to the community with community events, how we operate. One candidate was like, he had done ride-alongs and he could tell that our department is team oriented. He went to other departments and he said he didn't feel the same vibe as he did with us. Like he felt like we were all communicating. Every call he went on, the officers communicated with each other. He just got a good vibe and liked the way we police here in Northampton. So like that was great to hear. We're an accredited agency. We've been accredited since 2002 and we were the 6th in the Commonwealth to do that. We're up again next year. So that'll be another 3-year cycle. They look at our department. We operate at a high level of standards and training. And for a department our size, we do have many different offshoots and special units for people to join. So we tell them at the interview, you have to start as a patrol officer. Most likely you'll go to midnight shift and work a few years. But we also have bike patrol. We have community liaison officers. We have crime scene officers, accident reconstruction. You can be a field training officer, a DART officer. We have programs like Coffee with a Cop and all the fun things I just said, you know, all the community related events we go to. A lot of places don't have that. And our new recruits, they like that stuff. So that keeps people at our department. And our officers are are some of the most well-trained professionals of any police department around. We get many calls from other departments to speak with us about how to become accredited, what trainings are we doing for this and that. So I take pride in our department and how well respected we are within the law enforcement community. And, you know, I thank our officers for being so proactive and community oriented and just making our department look good. So that's my presentation.
You're first, right? Yeah. Second, right. Were you chief last, yeah.
Interim. Active chief.
Oh, right, interim. That's right. Okay, let's move on to.
Well, could I just ask one?
Sure.
What I feel is an important clarifying question. Chief, thank you. I am looking at $100,000 or so reduction in your budget, and that comes from your PS account. How do you account for that? Because you have the same number of positions.
That didn't come directly from. Sorry, it didn't come from actual PS salary lines. It came from dropping holiday pay slightly and the education stipends line.
So it was like the domino effect.
Yeah.
The chief.
Yep. I'm sorry. So as when we hired Chief Gartledge and then we moved everybody up, those were lines that we cut. And also, I think in part of looking at the education stipends and what is needed each year for the folks that we have on staff now, we were able to reduce that line.
Okay, so number of positions remains the same.
Correct.
And then these are benefits, I guess, that were adjusted.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to see if there's any members of the public either in the room or on Zoom that would like to share any comments or questions for the police chief, Cartledge. Yes, I see Ace. Oh. Well, hi. Thank you.
Ace Taylor, Ward 3. I have a couple of questions for the DPW, so I'll hold some time for that later. I have one question for a department that's not here, specifically legal. When I was looking through the budget and looking at line items, I was very confused what the legal budget is going to. It's just labeled as legal for $270,000, judgment $5,000, especially in comparison to other departments. I can't understand what any of that's for. On topic, I have three questions about the police budget. The first is bringing forward a question from last week about what efforts are being made to move call volume and funding to the DCC, of moving more time and attention to there. I would like more detail about the police supplies line item that is $62,537, especially in light of the department's recalcitrance to detail out exactly what kinds of weapons they have in their department. And finally, I would like to know if the community events that were mentioned in the presentation are paid or volunteer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ace. We usually make a whole thing so you don't have to keep getting up back and.
Okay.
We'll remind you though. You don't have to remember them all.
Good.
That was a lot. Okay. Any questions from the public, either on Zoom or in the room for the police chief? Okay. So why don't we, I guess you have to stand up. Why don't we go to our member Ace's questions first before we move on to counselors?
Do you want me to repeat them for you, Chief? Okay. Okay. I'm.
Yeah. No, I can.
No, I'm fine. I just need. Ace? Can you come back up here? I didn't catch one of your. You made a reference to an account of some $62,000. What account is that?
That would be this police supplies line item.
Police supplies.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So taking these questions one by one, Chief, what efforts are being made to move calls? I mean, you talked about working with dispatch and DCC. So can you be more specific about what efforts are being made to move some calls to DCC? And also, does any money go with them from budget to budget?
So what I can say is over the past year, myself, Fire Chief Peelis and Kelly Schutze, the Director of Communications, have met with the Division of Community Care numerous times. And beginning in March, we implemented a way for people, if they do call dispatch, to have calls rerouted, if necessary, or if it's a appropriate call to the Division of Community Care. People can also still just call them directly. And if they feel like it's a call they need the police to go to or fire, then they will be routing us back. You know, it's kind of a mutual, a two-way street. So since March, when we implemented this new call system, 22 calls came into dispatch that were diverted to the Division of Community Care. Some of the calls we went on with them. Some they went on, you know, on their own as the Division of Community Care. Obviously, some of these calls we would, as police, we would probably never go on anyway. So some were like transports. Someone was upset about the medication they were on. Like, these are really low level calls. But what I can say is we collaborate with them. I've called the DCC directly about camps that people had set up in different wooded areas. So we have been working with them and collaborating, and I think they're doing a great job. It's most of the calls that they're going on haven't really been police related, although we have been on some of the calls with them. But it's been, you know, a slow start, but we're working well together. So.
And the second part of that question is about money. I mean, you mentioned 22 calls to dispatch were directed to DCC. Is there any way to measure the impact on, you can't handle the call volume that goes directly to PD as it is. So is there any way to measure at some point what the diversion of some of these calls to DCC is going to mean in terms of less work for Northampton Police that may result in a reduced budget?
The calls that, like, our calls for service are still increasing. It's not, you know, we have a co-responder that is based out of our station too. So we have two of them. They're going on some of the mental health calls. They're able to clinically diagnose people and Section 12 them, which is something I don't think the DCC can do yet. But what I can say is that we're working with the DCC, and like I said, they're doing a great job. It's just most of the calls they're going on aren't impacting our call volume directly right now. Anyway, so.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mayor.
So as Commissioner O'Leary said the other day, you know, a lot of their engagement, most of their engagement are people going directly to them at the DCC. So it's a bit hard to quantify that, but you know, a lot of those people now know to go directly to the DCC, either to go, you know, to call them directly or to go to the Roundhouse Plaza. So, you know, a good amount, some amount of those calls would have gone to dispatch if before people had the, you know, the outlet to go directly to DCC.
Okay, the next question, Chief, was the one about the police supply line item. And I think the question was asking for more details about what's included there.
I may, Chief.
Sure.
So that supply line covers police supplies such as Sentry uniform, purchases at Foster Farrar, Northampton Bicycle. You can probably tell what these things are. I cannot. So it's various supplies. Most of it's for Sentry uniform, Northampton Bicycle.
Sentry uniforms, where we get our police uniforms made. Officers have a clothing allowance. but we also purchase a lot from them. They're the only real police supply store who we rely on. So a police uniform is expensive. So, that takes a lot of the officers' clothing. It's easily spent away on all the gear that they have to purchase. So.
So where would we find expenses on weapons?
Supply.
Epi. Where? We might have to get back to you on that question.
Okay.
Scrolling through.
Okay. So the final question, Chief, was attendance by police officers at community events. Is that paid or unpaid time?
I would say it's a mix. Some officers are paid, and some employees choose to volunteer their time.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
There was also the question from Ace about the legal department, but maybe we could have, if the mayor would like, maybe at the end of this conversation, if you wanted to address that one, since we don't have that, we're not going to have that represented. Okay. Counselors, questions? Councilor Labarge.
I want to thank you, especially as the chief. And I'll say it again, and the mayor has heard me, and I've talked with her of how valuable it is with you going out in the community and having the meetings and meeting people throughout the city is very, very valuable. Also, too, I want to thank the police department of what they've been doing lately is going with you as a chief to a resident who has a problem. And I know that it's been happening in my ward, and people are extremely happy about that. To be able to see an officer and a chief and listen to what the problems are. And that problem was solved instantly between the director of BPW and you, of putting a good quality of life for residents that were lacking that because of the jake breaking on Ryan Road. And that is valuable. So I want people to understand you just don't drive around. You're out there. There's no question about it. And meeting people throughout the city. And I know our mayor very, very well, which she highly believes in total communication. And what is your safety minimum right now on each shift? I see all these, who these people are, and some of them I do know.
Mm-hmm.
What is it on a daily basis, 40 hours a week?
What's the shift minimums?
Yep. What are your
So
shifts?
Four patrol cars
That's it.
and a walking beat or a bike officer. And
That's it.
one or two supervisors. One's in the station, and we may have a sergeant out on the road and a station officer who doesn't leave the station.
Do you feel, as the police chief, that minimum of 4 officers is the job being done? And I can say it's not. It's not even covering what is happening throughout the wards. I can talk about my ward with the amount of speeding going on. Very seldom now people are saying they don't see the cruisers out there. I'll call and I'll say you need to get somebody out there. Going to a road right down the line. So to me, what would you say is an average amount of shifts that you need? How many officers do you need so that people feel that they see that visibility. Right now, a lot of people are not seeing that visibility of cruisers lately.
I mean, my ideal shift would be the 4 patrol officers, 2 bike officers, or 2 walking beats, because the businesses downtown want to see the police, or, feel safer, and a dedicated traffic car to deal with all the traffic complaints that, about, and every other counselor knows about. And there are days where we may have a day where we have an extra car because the whole shift is available, but most of the time we're not, so we do have the traffic grant, which we get through the federal government, which is helpful, but they designate what we do on the grant, so we can't just put it out and say, go do whatever you'd like. It's dedicated phases of the grant. So OUI, speed enforcement, handheld devices, things like that. They kind of dictate what we do for the month. But yeah, I mean, I would love to have more officers, but.
Anyways, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the mayor too for apparently trying to make people's a better quality of life. And this is extremely important, especially when you don't have sidewalks and so forth like that in the rural areas. So thank you very much for accommodating the residents when they're calling, and your staff are there. Thank you.
Thanks, Counselor. Appreciate it.
Okay, I see. Let me just check with Finance Committee. I'm just gonna, I see Counselor Jarrett's hand. I'm gonna actually ask a couple of questions before that. I also just wanted to comment, Counselor Labarge, that as much as we appreciate our department, we have to remember that visibility doesn't make everyone feel safe. Sometimes being, available but not there, can make, so visibly there, has a, it's just people have different takes on what feels safe. So I hear you, but I felt compelled to comment about that. And because we heard that in lots of public comment.
You hear it in Ward 7 also.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my questions I missed, I have 2. It might have been in the slide, but how many of the student officers went on to be actually hired? Was that in the slide?
There was multiple phases of student officers. But like I said, we did have interviews today, so we're still continuing to push them through.
I guess how many are definitely not gonna, because they're not compelled to. I mean,
they're hired, like when we hire them as a student officer, they're ours.
Okay, so it's because it used to be that we would pay for the training, but they had the option of not pursuing a. I thought that's how it was under when I first started on council.
We give them a conditional offer.
Mhm.
Some of them started as we call it a CSO, community service officer. So they would like learn the desk and stuff like that. And we train them, get them in the pipeline early.
Yeah.
But once they sign the conditional offer, they're our employee. Like,
right.
I don't expect them to leave.
Right. Okay. I think, I guess I'm speaking of, this is a while back when I started on council 6 years ago, that we used to pay for the academy, but they didn't necessarily all join the force, but that was before, I guess, that was my, what my understanding was at the time.
I mean, I think maybe so we can't compel someone to stay with NPD. So it's I think been frustrating in the past when we would have invested in someone and put them through the academy and then they go and leave for another department or leave for state police. So that might be, I also remember Chief Casper talking about that. So I think that's maybe what you're thinking about.
Yeah, thank you. And then my other question was, I know I've had community members, I think there's some confusion around sometimes our police, the city's police are hired for projects or, and I hear residents saying, are we paying for that? You know, so could you just explain how that works when officers are hired for a private detail, the city, who's paying and that sort of thing? Thank you.
So it depends which detail you're talking about, but 99% are the contractor will be paying for the police. So if it's a traffic detail, the Paradise City Arts Festival, I'm trying to think what else. Most road details are paid by the company that's hiring the police officer. Other like a city event, we might pay for the overtime, like first night, we might pay for that out of our budget, but 99% of them are paid by the actual contractor who needs police services.
And I guess a follow-up question would be, does that stress your staffing levels when that happens, or is it kind of planned so far advanced that?
Most of that is voluntary. So it's put out through a phone app and they can sign up for the detail. But I will say like protests and stuff, that we require staffing if like the road's gonna be blocked or we need security measures. Typically it'll come out, that'll be overtime out of our budget and people will be forced to work that because we obviously need a presence or in case something happens or we need to shut the road. But if you're talking mostly, traffic details, security details at like a prom or Smith College graduation, everybody else, they pay for that on their own. It's not budget money.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can I just offer a brief
Sure.
follow up on this?
Yes.
Before you go to Councilor Jarrett, I think also, Chief, I've noticed more, particularly last summer, civilian flaggers being used at road details.
Mhm. So we can't fill all the details. We've already had a day recently where we had over 80 traffic details we cannot fill. So we also have traffic control officers who are either new people we're hiring as like a student officer. We allow them to get trained on traffic duty. They'll be able to work until they go to the police academy, extra duty, or retirees can retire out and become a traffic control officer, which supplements our ability to fill the details. Even with those people on our staff, they don't get, it's not like a benefited position. It's just they're working traffic details to help us fill them. We do have a traffic, so companies hire like an actual flagging company, which you've seen, Counselor, and those are all contracted through like the company who's working. So like Eversource, they can only work certain ones. They can't work any one they want. But
Thank you.
even with all them, we still cannot fill the amount of traffic details.
Okay. Counselor Jarrett, President Jarrett.
Thank you. I had a question about overtime. In the mayor's budget narrative, it refers to a reduction in overtime, and it's clear from your presentation that overtime has gone down, which is great. But the budget line item for overtime is gone up from fiscal 24 from 233,750 to 298,750. So I wonder if you could explain that.
Yes, Counselor. So the overtime in my presentation was related to just filling shift overtime. It doesn't include officers who stay late on a call, who are investigating, after their shift. They could be there for 4 or 5 hours, so they're on overtime. Our detectives, if they get called in, they're on overtime. Last summer, part of the security we had to provide to the Connecticut River Greenway, that was pretty much shut down for the summer. The overtime for those days, part of it came out of our budget. So these are all minus the shift overtime that we're, keeping our shift minimums as what I talked about earlier. The other overtime is overtime that we can't predict. It's officers are out on emergency calls after the fact. they're staying late. They have, some of the supervisors have administrative duties. Well, they all do a ton of work. Some of those cannot be done on their shift. They have to be on overtime. So that's probably where the increase did happen. But it didn't have to do with my presentation, which was just overtime to fill the shift minimums.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How does our pay compare to neighboring communities?
So both the police unions, we just did go through contract negotiations. We are still, depending on which community you're referring to, some communities still pay a lot more. We're losing people to other departments. Two people are potentially going to the state police. Another officer's thinking about going to Chicopee Police Department. We've lost people to East Hampton, which pays significantly more. So it's still, with the new contracts, I'm hoping that we retain more people for the service that our officers give to this city and the amount of training and dedication our department gives to the community. I feel like we should be the top paid department in the area. But our officers hopefully will stay. They just did receive some good contract negotiations. So.
Thanks. And the last question is, were any of the stacked calls emergencies, meaning you were unable to respond to an emergency?
I would just off the top of my head say no. We would, if we were unavailable on another call that was not an emergency, we would obviously leave that call and come back to it to respond to any other emergency or call mutual aid from state police or a neighboring town. But most likely, I would say most of them probably were not an emergency nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of follow-ups. So can you give some examples of what kind of calls would fall under officer stack?
Sure. I mean, it could really be any, I would say, a minor motor vehicle accident in a parking lot, a past shoplifting where it happened hours ago. Any type of call where someone's identity was stolen through a computer. Obviously, it's important to investigate, but it's not of emergency nature. A barking dog. But anything other than a general call like those, like if it was an accident with injury, obviously any type of disturbance, an ongoing shoplifting, robbery, or anything like that, we would drop what we were doing and the supervisor would direct officers to leave your call and go to the emergency. If an officer was on a motor vehicle stop, like we've had stops and the officer just says, I am sorry, I have to go, just let the person go. And we leave to go to the emergency. So without having it in front of me, counselor, any non-emergency call where someone's life's in jeopardy or there's some sort of police action that needs to be taken immediately could be stacked. Any low-level call.
Okay, thanks. I also wanted to return to the student officers because that was a subject of some discussion 2 years ago. And I think that Councilor Maori was asking from that first group of 4 student officers who graduated from the academy in March of last year, 2024, they came on board in July of 2024, and are all of them still working for NPD?
Without having the names in front of me, I would say yes. I just, in my head, I don't know the group by name, I'd have to look at who was hired when. But in my recollection, I think they all are still working. Yes.
Okay, so they have been, there is retention.
Yes.
As best as you can recall.
Yes.
The other point that you made that I feel is important, and if Director Nardi, can you return to the slide that showed the purple and green, the purple being forced overtime? There were at least two major reasons for creating these positions. One was to have new officers in the training pipeline earlier, and that seems to have worked. And an intended consequence was to not have as many vacancies, so that there could be a reduction in the overtime, which also seems to be working, which saves the city money. But also, I think thank you, that's the slide I was referring to. Also, I think the point is, that was made 2 years ago, is that some of this forced overtime creates perhaps unsafe situations with tired officers. And when there's not as much of that, then is it fair to say that you feel that it's creating a safer situation for both the officers and the community with fewer working forced overtime?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, nobody ever wants to get forced over. I've been there years ago. Most people have plans. What if they didn't sleep well the night before and then they get forced over? What if they could have had court that morning, then worked second shift 3 to 11 p.m. and then get forced over overnight? So they could have been up for 24 hours. So, what that does is create poor morale. People are calling out sick more because they got forced over. So there's potential that the officer who just worked 20 hours calls out sick the next day, which then in turn forces another officer to get forced, which in turn creates this whole bad cycle of behavior, which it's not their fault. And we don't want officers exhausted on the street making decisions that affect people's lives. We want well-rested, mentally well officers who can respond and make sound judgments in a split second. So I agree, Counselor. Like the holdover and the money's one thing, but the toll it takes on our staff is a whole other animal. And I think like we're getting a lot better right now.
Thank you. I think this is a very important slide.
Thank you.
So I see Counselor Perry's been waiting. Did you have
Go ahead, let Perry
Yeah.
do it.
Okay. I see Counselor Perry, and Counselor Clemmer, Counselor Labarge. So, yeah, there he is. Oh,
Hello, Chief. Good to see you again. We were just together a little before 9 this morning. And I have to echo your statement that this last round of interviews was very heartening. I've been doing this for a bit, and that kind of tails me into this question I'm going to ask, which is the same as I asked Chief Pellis, is could you talk a little bit about the hiring climate? And, we talked about wages, but again, maybe talk about how Northampton is different than our neighbors, East Hampton, the unique situations that we have.
Thanks, Counselor. Good to see you again, too. So I guess I'll start with the hiring and retention climate. The amount of applicants we're getting right now, today was an amazing day for interviews because we never get 4 out of 4 who we want to move forward. It's never like that, but I'm glad we had a good day. There's limited applicants applying to be police officers in general across the country. As we all know, Northampton is a unique place to work. It's very hard to, be a police officer here. And for someone to apply to our department, knowing what our city's like and everything, like it's a big step for people. We've been doing more recruiting, trying to get people from all walks of life into our department. Some of the interviews today, their degree one person had a PhD in soil science, but it was like an amazing interview. Like these people are like traveling from other walks of life into Northampton Police Department. So we also started, so everyone knows the hiring application called Indeed. So we signed on to something called Get Badged, and it's a police, kind of like a police Indeed app. So candidates are pre-vetted now. They take an exam with this company. Once we get to them, we can kind of like nudge them like on Indeed and try to have them come to our department. So we actually, that company did an exam at our police department last Saturday. We got 15 people from the area. We're hoping that we get 15 people who apply and want to work here because we need a pool of candidates to pull from. Right now, the 4 people we interviewed this morning, that's it. We have no more applicants. Years ago, we'd give an exam at Smith Oak. We'd have 300 people applying. And that goes all the way back to when I got hired. You could not get on a police department if you wanted to back in the 90s. Now we have an open application process and we get limited people, but I feel like it's starting to turn around. I don't know if that answers. And what's different about Northampton is our community, it's one of the bigger cities in Hampshire County, and our department is very busy. It's a unique downtown it's vibrant. We're busy. We encounter so many different types of calls in a community this size. And I feel like people who apply here, a lot of them don't even know how busy this town is. So although other places may pay better, the experience and the different units we have at our police department, I think kind of reel people in because there is areas to branch out into in our department. I don't know if that answers your question, Counselor.
I think that pretty much does. I know that, again, we do interviews, but I just want to state for the council and everyone watching that I think this goes to Councilor Moulton's question about the DCC. Embedded in the interview process are questions about the Division of Community Care and Community Policing. And our chief makes sure that that is at the forefront when we are looking to bring new recruits in to our community, because again, it's not only a vibrant city, but we have Smith College and protests. It's a different environment than most people who are looking for a job are. My second question, I think, was kind of talked about with Council Maori and Moulton about retention for students. But the last one is that there's been a call for a little more enforcement on ordinances, like sidewalk ordinances, shoveling, clearing pathways. And I'm just wondering, in order to meet that demand, would that fall under like overtime hours, or how would that put stress on your department? If we were, because we want to make sure everyone's safe. So,
are you speaking about the winter time?
Winter time, but also during the summertime when there are pathways that are not cleared, brush and whatnot.
I missed the last part. Pathways not cleared.
Sorry, there's music happening here now. Pathways with overgrown brush and stuff on the sidewalk. Would enforcing those ordinances put a strain? How would that strain affect your budget lines? Would it be overtime, or how do you need more officers? I'm just curious.
It's a building.
I mean, as far as the winter time, we try to, we spoke about the clearing the snow off the sidewalks. If we were going to really try to push enforcing that more, we would need more staff on our end. As far as clearing, I'm not sure what you mean overgrown. Like if we get a call from a resident about an overgrown street, or pathway, or even downtown enforcing ordinances for street performers who's supposed to have a permit, stuff like that. Our bike officer downtown is supposed to be enforcing the downtown ordinances. But if you're talking about the bike path, we rarely have them go all the way up the bike path to Look Park because we want them kind of downtown. So, I mean, we'd have to have a dedicated person for that type of thing. If that's what you're speaking about, Counselor.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I was just pondering how we would enforce some of these ordinances. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And just to clarify that the building commissioner the enforcing agent isn't always the police, depending on the like the light ordinance. Noise ordinance would fall under the building inspector.
And who puts out the tickets or fines then?
I think it depends which ordinance we're speaking about, Counselor.
Okay, Counselor Clemmer, Counselor Barge, and Counselor Rothenberg all had questions.
Thanks for coming, Chief. I've been forced at work many, many times and no, it's not fun and it is bad for morale and overall well-being. So I can appreciate you having more staff and not having to force people as much. So at the academy, the classes are 5 months. Do they have more than one class going through each year? Or?
There's usually, so our closest academy is the Holyoke Academy. There are multiple academies in the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
We can send them to any of them,
Okay.
but we typically send them to Holyoke or Boylston, which is the next one.
Mm-hmm.
They do run 2 per year, back to back usually.
Okay. And then is there some kind of contract or an agreement they have to sign when they do go through the academy committing to staying any amount of time?
We looked into that years ago and the legal advice we received, I believe, was that we can't have them sign something saying if you leave within 3 years, you have to pay like your academy fee back or anything. Cause we pay for the academy fee, which is $3,200 per person. I think we checked with the city solicitor years ago and they said you could write it, but you can't enforce it, something to that effect.
So it's not super expensive, but it's a lot of time that you spend training people that also
if someone
counts for their salary.
Goes to the academy, they're getting paid benefits. They're getting paid to go to the academy and we pay for the academy and all their equipment. Even if they are there through the academy, it is expensive. It's a first initial investment and expense for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and it adds up if you have to do it multiple times. And then, so for their weapons, how often would one replace a gun or new equipment?
They're made to last a long time. Yeah, they're typically over 10 years.
So it's not once they have their equipment, then they expect them to have it for a good part of their career, at least half of it. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Councilor Rothenberg
Yeah.
and Councilor Barge.
Hi, Chief.
Hello.
And thank you for always so promptly and courteously answering questions I have. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the mayor for allowing you to do that.
You're welcome.
I have a few questions, like areas of inquiry where I think these may just be kind of simple yes or no, or facts and figures, don't really need a narrative. I want to understand the traffic detail better. Do we have a pretty good match as far as the revenue and the expense when it's being privately paid? Is that sort of almost at $0 to us?
Sure. I don't know what you mean.
So do the contractors who hire these details pay the city and then we pay our guys with that money and it's sort of apple for apple?
Each payroll, our officers will get paid out of a city account that the contractors get, like the money goes into. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you are correct. It is basically a zero, except for we get paid for a percentage for the car, for the vehicle and an admin fee, but
Okay. And is that also the case? Do we ever hire civilian flaggers right now? That might have been said earlier.
So our traffic details are put out through a bidding process to all the officers and every tier. So full-time officers are one tier and then it goes down from there. Once all the tiers are gone through, the outside agencies and the flagging company can go into our system and take like what's left over, so they're filled.
And do you know, is that a union thing, like that they have to have priority, the full-times first? Or could we opt to use civilians?
It's part of our policy.
Policy, okay. But you don't think in the contract?
I'm not sure if it's in the contract.
Okay.
Probably.
And is there a big pay differential? Do you know when we pay the civilians as compared to the officers for traffic detail?
So every full-time officer right down through what we call them traffic control officers are paid the same hourly rate.
Okay.
If it goes to the flagging company, like they're taking it from us. So whatever they pay is on their company.
But theoretically, we could train and provide those jobs to people who live in Northampton, the traffic detail. We wouldn't have to use an outside agency to hire for that? Or is it anything we've looked into yet?
I mean, our policies, like our internal policy is retirees or new recruit, people who are providing, I mean, anyone could go apply at a flagging company and work traffic details.
Okay, so we don't have any hiring of civilians directly at this time. Okay. Really quick question about the overtime, forced overtime and voluntary overtime. Are those paid at the same rate?
Typically, yes.
Okay. So when we look at the officer line item in a budget for wages, we are looking at just their base regular non-overtime hours when we see it per person. Okay. And how many hours does that reflect of work? You could put it per week, or how many shifts per month? How long is a shift? However is easiest for you to break down or quantify what's their base working hours.
Well, there's multiple different formulas, I guess, but there's patrol officer who works 4 days on, 2 days off, rotating backwards. Our detectives work 5 and 2. Supervisors, some work a 4 and 2, some work a 5 and 2.
And if I could stop you, when you say a day, is that an 8 hour? Okay. All right. That sort of gives me a general sense. And so when you say we're down about 7 officers on average per month who are out for military, medical, family, sick, that's kind of the base hours of someone times 7 is how many we're missing per month. Okay. And I need to catch up on the DCC portion that we heard from Director O'Leary. You can let me know if this has already been answered, if you recall. How did we get over that hurdle about being able to have police calls ordinarily now be able to be picked up? Because there was a regulatory problem, right?
Right. We touched on that, but I don't think
there was this, I think, as I recall, the way it was presented to us last year was like it was so much potential medical in every call that DCC really couldn't touch it. So how did you guys work around that ultimately?
Some of the meetings we had with the fire chief and Kelly Schutze, the director of communications, and the health department. I can't speak on the fire regulations or the EMS, but there were strict regulations through the state, I believe, that any type of medical call, or if someone called 911, mandated ambulance would have to respond. We can't divert it to the DCC if those things happen initially, because we're liable, or the fire department would be liable to not respond.
And I think the challenge was that, like, say someone's lying down and sleeping, we don't know if that's a medical. So a lot of things were just falling into that category. Has that changed at all? Have we got some more nuance now?
I mean, the new protocol we came up with for filtering calls, it seems to be better. Kelly from dispatch would know better
Okay.
than I.
Okay, I'll send her a message. And do you happen to know, does the public need to ask dispatch specifically for DCC, or does dispatch have discretion, if you know?
Dispatch, I believe, with the matrix we came up with, has the discretion because they ask the caller specific questions, and if it is all whatever no, then it's a DCC potential call.
Okay, great. And then my last question, this one does kind of call for a narrative. I wonder if you can speak at all to trends in the schools with policing. I know that I got a report from a student that on Monday at the middle school, there was a fight that resulted in an ambulance and 3 cars coming, for example, 3 police cars. Is that sort of on the rise? Can you just speak generally to how things are going with the schools from a policing perspective?
Without numbers in front of me, I don't know how many calls we've received from the schools in general. I think just off the top of my head, some of the stuff is reported to us after the fact. There's obviously calls like you just mentioned that we are going to respond to because it's kind of an emergency nature. But without the numbers in front of me, I can't. I mean, I work Monday through Friday. Typically, I listen to the radio when I can. So, but to come up with some sort of formula on, the trend right now, I'd have to give you numbers on how many calls we've gone to.
Is that information that you might be able to follow up with me on, or that the council might be interested in procuring as an information request?
Like how many calls we've been on to the schools?
Yeah, as a trend, so maybe over the past few years.
We could do that.
Yeah, and calls that you get after the fact, however you would sort of gather up the school data.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Lamarche, did you have a question?
Yeah, but I think Derek Perry, Counselor, had the same idea I did. I'm just concerned hearing that East Hampton pays more than what Northampton does for police officers. I never knew that, but I always wondered why people were leaving.
They don't always leave for pay, but a lot of it is pay. Sometimes they leave. It's not what they thought it was going to be here. Smaller department, sometimes better. I don't know. Some people leave for different reasons, but we hear over the past years, we've heard like for the service we provide to the city and the high standard we're held to here. That's been the comment randomly to us about that, but
I always thought that the state was the one that determines, no matter police department, fire department, what your levels are and pay. That's what I thought, but I'm very surprised. I mean, yes, East Hampton is different than us and it's a smaller one, but hearing that they're making more money than our police officers here. And I'm wondering if the same thing is happening to our fire department. Huh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Let me just check before we let you go. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thank you and welcome to your official non-interim presentation time. And Mayor and Director Nardi, if we could either address that legal department question, or we could, if you would rather, we can do it by, email.
I feel like the council could address it as well. So, the legal services line is for the city solicitor who provides legal services for the entire city, for all city departments, for the city council, also for all multi-member bodies in the city. So our boards, our committees, our commissions. Additionally, right now he's assisting with the ordinance review committee that's doing the every 5-year review of our ordinances. He also works with, and this budget supports any special counsel that we have. So labor council, environmental council. You know, we have contract negotiations right now, so we use labor council. And actually this year, you know, we're negotiating the Comcast cable license, which is something that happens every 10 years. So we have a special counsel that is paid out of this line for that right now. So it's for all legal services for the city.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to the DPW and Director LaScalia, but I do want to take a 10-minute break first. So I will see, we'll be back here at 8:02. Thank you.
8:02.
back to the public budget hearings for budget FY 2026. We're on to a presentation by the DPW Director, Director Lascalia. Welcome.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
if I may speak before the presentation.
Sure.
As a member of the Pedal People Cooperative, I have a financial interest that's greater than the average resident in the decisions that are made regarding the Locust Street Transfer Center, which the DPW oversees. So I will recuse myself for the presentation and questions, but may come in at the end to ask questions that are unrelated to that issue.
Thank you, Councilor Jarrett.
Okay. Hi, councilors. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about our FY26 budget tonight. I thought it best to just give a summary of the budget, which is divided into several sections. So there's the general fund sections and then the enterprise sections. So I will start with the general fund sections. The general fund is organized into 4 divisions. We have administration and engineering, highways, which includes streets and fleet maintenance. Then there's snow and ice, and forestry, parks, and cemeteries. So our responsibilities within the general fund are very varied. We have more than 150 miles of roads, 85 miles of sidewalks, 38 bridges. We have over 150 vehicles and pieces of specialized equipment to do our work. More than 10,000 public shade trees, 240 acres of athletic fields and parks, 4 cemeteries, and all of those are active burial grounds, including Bridge Street Cemetery, which is the oldest in the city. And those cemeteries have more than 20,000 monuments. We also have more than 11 miles of bike paths. So when putting together this year's budget, we needed to balance the need to accommodate PS increases due to collective bargaining agreements and the reality that the cost of goods and services continues to rise. There's been a common theme tonight about vacancies. We are also faced with ongoing challenges related to vacant positions. Right now, we have 24 vacancies out of 87 full-time positions. Last year at this time, we had 13 vacancies. So I know there was a question about this. Those vacant positions can vary, but in general, we see our truck driver and equipment operator vacancies most commonly. These are positions which require commercial driver's licenses because our trucks weigh more than 26,000 pounds and they have an air brake. So you have to have a special license to operate that air brake. You are also subject to random drug testing. And these are federal motor carrier rules. The city does not create the rules. These rules are created at the federal level. So we have to test for marijuana, and marijuana is a prohibited substance. So there is an industry-wide shortage of people who hold CDL licenses. This is not a problem that is unique to Northampton. This is a problem that is faced by every municipality and increasingly every contractor who I seek to hire to supplement our dwindling workforce. We also typically have a large contingent of seasonal employees who work for us in parks. Typically, I have about 10 seasonal employees. Right now, I have 2. So if you combine all those vacancies together, we are well over 30 vacancies, and our operations are strained at this time. So back to the budget, the Administration and Engineering Division is responsible for the development and oversight of all of our capital projects, our utility billing and administration, and adherence to our regulatory requirements. So one of the things I talk about a lot here is regulators. We're heavily regulated by both the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Environmental Protection. There's not a lot of discretion in what they do and what we do. They tell us what they want us to do. So we actually have to create calendars in order to comply with all of the reporting that's due, in order to comply with all of the actions that we have to take in order to satisfy the various permits that are held by various parts of the DPW. And I'll talk talk about that a little bit more. We're also managing just about $45 million worth of capital projects right now. And we have to have significant engineering support in order to manage the many technical aspects of these projects. So 4 out of the 24 vacancies that I just referenced are engineering positions. So that requires that we engage outside engineering firms for assistance. But again, much like the CDL drivers, we are having difficulty with engineering assistance. This is, just a really difficult time in the industry for whatever reason, and everybody's resources are thin. So I talked about this last year, moving on to the highways budget, and it bears repeating. We talk a lot about streets and sidewalks and their condition, and these are primarily funded through our capital plan. But we also have responsibility for sort of less commonly talked about infrastructure, more than 30 traffic signal controlled intersection and 40 bridges, which has things like guardrails and signage that requires ongoing investment. So kind of an interesting expense that we recently had. About a month ago, Saturday evening, a centipede crawls across the terminal board of the signal control cabinet at Bridge and Holly Street and wipes out the entire intersection. So the lights just stop working, and the centipede is no longer with us. But, that is an example of just sort of a random thing that happens that actually has a fairly significant expense to the budget that we have to account for. Requires mobilization of a signal technician to go figure out A, what the problem is, and then B, to replace the terminal board and remove the centipede and move on, as well as the disruption to the traffic. So this is just something that, when we're talking about the things that people see, our streets and sidewalks, these are sort of the things that happen that we're not necessarily paying as much attention to, but that we have to fund through this budget. So we do have a line item in this budget for signal maintenance. It's at $50,000. That's an amount of money which we should actually consider increasing, because these incidents are actually more common than we think. I also want to talk a little bit about bridges. The Pine Street Bridge is sort of an interesting example as well. We did some stabilizing repairs in 2021 on this bridge. They cost just under $300,000. And this bridge is actually in pretty good shape relative to many of the bridges within the city. But as anyone who lives in the area or drives by knows, the guardrails are severely compromised on this bridge. And that's something that we're looking at that will likely be a 6-figure level of effort to repair. So in the meantime, we have to sort of try to make stabilizing repairs or put out barricades and then kind of make sure that they are maintained. But these are examples of some of the things that we have to fund within the highways budget that don't necessarily get as much attention as some of the things that we consistently talk about within these chambers. So moving on to the snow and ice budget, that includes the overtime required for plowing, contractor assistance with plowing, and the salt that we use to treat the city's roadways. So I talked about this quite a bit at the City Council committee that I attended with Chief Cartledge. But in general, we purchase about 2,500 to 3,000 tons of road salt each year. And we have roughly that amount on hand at any given time. And we need to have it on hand in the event that there is a shortage. And that actually happened this winter. And we did not have any supply chain issues because we have a huge stockpile of salt on hand for that reason. But it is this budget which pays for that road salt. The unique nature of DPW snow and ice operations relative to other city departments and other city operations is that it requires the simultaneous mobilization of more than 70 employees to clear snow from across the city. So we have to ensure we have staffing.
There's some background noise. Can you repeat the employee number?
Yes, 70. So that's our ideal mobilization number. So we have to ensure that we have staffing redundancy and equipment redundancy for a sustained response. And by sustained response, I mean it could be a multi-day event, and we certainly saw that recently. We can't afford downtime. If a plow goes down, if a loader goes down, if a grader goes down, we have to have another one to replace it because we have to keep moving. So the more vacancies we have, and I talked about the vacancies that we have, the more pressure that puts on the remaining employees to cover a protracted event and to sort of push through fatigue and weather and poor conditions. And much like Chief Cartledge referred to, we want people who are alert, who are awake. You're driving a vehicle that weighs 26,000 pounds, and we need you well rested. So again, the vacancies that we're seeing are definitely straining the operation. So in forestry, parks, and cemeteries, we operate in support of the city's recreational programs. These include soccer, baseball, softball. Florence Field alone totals 24 acres. We mow it multiple times a week. That's a significant level of effort just for one employee in a really massive mower that's probably about as wide as this room. And he often mows that field 3 times a week. So all parks and fields are managed organically in accordance with the city's ordinance, which requires it. Organic management, and I've talked about this in the past, requires a higher level of investment in materials and in man hours for things like overseeding and aeration. And then just a few words about the tree program. We've planted more than 2,000 new trees since 2016. We've been named Tree City USA in consecutive years for over a decade. And I always like to take this opportunity to thank the volunteers of Tree Northampton for their efforts and support of that. So regarding the enterprise, so that's just kind of a quick run through of the general fund. For the enterprise funds, a couple of months ago, I did speak in detail about water and sewer revenue, our operations, and our capital projects during the rate setting process. I'll recap that by saying we operate and maintain expansive and complex water and sewer wastewater systems, certainly relative to other communities, but just sort of in a vacuum, they are quite complex. And these are heavily regulated by DEP and EPA. We don't have a lot of discretion. We have permits, multiple permits in both of these enterprises. The permits tell us what we need to do and how we need to do it and how we need to report on it. And our obligation is to produce those reports and produce those activities. And if we don't, that actually gets sort of broadcast publicly, and there's fines associated with that. So we have very good relationships with all of our regulators. We are in compliance with all of our permits, but that is a significant level of effort that we have to consistently meet. So our water treatment plant in Williamsburg, we're flowing about 2.5 million gallons of water a day to the city right now. That is down from nearly 3 million because Coca-Cola has significantly decreased their operation. So we're running through about 160 miles of water distribution lines and related apparatus. I've talked a little bit about water main breaks. Every time we have a water main break, it's like $25,000 to $30,000 to fix it. We had a particularly bad stretch, like starting in Christmas. I think I talked about this when we set utility rates, and we just had 7 water main breaks in a row, and it just like wouldn't stop. And there's a huge expense associated to the enterprise when that happens. Just switching gears quickly, the sewer system includes more than 110 miles of sewer lines. We have 7 pump stations, and our wastewater treatment plant, which flows about 5 million gallons a day. So we treat all of the water that's collected and discharge it into the Connecticut River. Again, heavily regulated, and we have a permit associated with that. So interesting anecdote, last Saturday, we received about 2.5 inches of rain in a pretty short span. It was actually raining at the rate of 9.14 inches per hour. So we did not receive 9.14 inches, but that's the rate it was raining at. So we were flowing more than 17 million gallons at the wastewater treatment plant last Saturday because we have inflow and infiltration into our sewer system when we have high intensity, high flow events like that, it triggered pretty much every alarm we have, sent the plant into a state of, fairly significant chaotic activity. So this was most of the day Saturday. We have really good operators who are able to stabilize the operation, but these are sort of the city operations that are going on that, people aren't necessarily paying attention to. But when we have high intensity weather events like this, we are profoundly impacted, and we have to have the resources and the personnel to respond to those events. We also have to have elasticity in our operation to receive and process all that water. So like we can take the 5 million gallons, which is happening like right now, but we also have to be able to flex up to take the 17 million gallons. And that's part of why we are doing the upgrade project that we are doing. So the $20 million upgrade project that's ongoing right now, it seeks to give us greater elasticity in our operation and to be able to sort of automate some of the processes that our operators used to have to do in the past, and to give us, some equipment redundancy, but to also allow us to be able to sort of keep up with what the weather is throwing at us, which is obviously not ideal. So for FY26, we've again submitted level funded budgets in both the water and sewer enterprises, and utility and base rate usage rates remain unchanged. So we have completed phase 1 of our upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. That was $11 million. We're well into phase 2 at $20 million, as I just said. And we expect substantial completion probably around the holidays if all goes well. So we're also engaged in engineering design for multi-million-dollar projects on our drinking water reservoirs and transmission main, and also our remote sewer pump station. So once we finish at the wastewater plant, we will be moving to the remote pump stations that are sort of scattered throughout the city and doing some upgrades there. Those haven't been touched in decades. So it does bear repeating, Coca-Cola is operating at far less than 50% of historical usage. The latest report is that their full departure will be at the end of this year. This is very difficult. The mayor's talked about this. At previous meetings, I've talked about this. When they tell us something, we have to believe them. So when we build the budget, we have to prove revenue for DOR, and we have to operate with the information that they are giving us. And the information that they are giving us is that their Northampton operations cease 6 months from now. They are down to 2 lines out of 8. So they used to have 8 production lines running, and they're down to 2. And we're definitely seeing that decrease just in the total that we're flowing out of the water treatment plant on a daily basis. The capital needs within these systems remain the same, whether Coke stays or goes. The system is what the system is. So we have to continue to invest in it and be responsible stewards of it. The difficulty with all of the enterprise funds is that they are closed financial systems. So money in has to equal or exceed the money out. And the only way to support increasing costs within these enterprises, because costs of everything increase, is we have to proportionately decrease something. And where we're at is capital investment. And we can also decrease personnel. So I believe there was a question about, what we have seen for staffing decreases. And we have seen significant decreases in staffing since just 2019. We've not funded a total of 9 positions within water and sewer, including 1 in each this year. So we have taken substantial reductions in personnel to try to keep these enterprises stable for the ratepayers. We're proud of the rate stability that we have been able to provide, despite sort of the uncertainty of Coca-Cola, and certainly despite the economic uncertainty that we all experience. So moving on to the solid waste enterprise, we also have increasing expenses and declining permit sales. So I believe there's a question about this too. In FY21, we sold just over 3,300 transfer station permits. To date for FY25, we've sold 2,797. So every year we sell a little bit less, and that's sort of what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years. We're also seeing increases in disposal costs for trash, compost, and recycling. Trash was $79.13 a ton in 2019. Today, it's just under $100 a ton. But last year, it was $113.58 a ton. So this is like all over the place. And, we're processing just under 1,000 tons a year. We used to receive revenue for our recyclables. We no longer do. We actually have to pay monthly disposal fees based on tonnage. Those fees are all over the place. So in January, we were paying $36.53 a ton. Now we're paying $21 a ton. So it's not even like we can sign an annual contract and sort of lock this in for 12 months. The way it works in Western Mass, we haul everything to Springfield, to the materials recycling facility, and we have a sort of a differential every month. So, if we were dealing with an enterprise that's worth like $10 million, you have a little bit of flex in the enterprise. We're dealing with an enterprise that's at around $600,000. And we have to have some level of financial elasticity to deal with these prices, which are just truly all over the place. And we have to take, if you bring us your recyclables, we have to receive them, and then we have to truck them to dispose of them. So we have an obligation to provide that service. We're trying to sort of fix our fees and provide stability for the users of our system. But these price increases, based on the numbers I've just gave you, are fairly significant, and they're also fairly unpredictable, although we can predict that they're definitely going up. So I think suffice to say that we've done a good job this year in holding the rates steady and our hours of operation steady to provide stability for the residents who rely on this service. There are no changes planned to transfer station operations this year. We are pulling out of retained earnings to balance this budget again, which is obviously not ideal. And I think that we should strive in future years to actually balance the budget and not be pulling out of retained earnings. We have been pulling out of retained earnings consistently, and that's not necessarily the best practice. So, I think we need to continue to think about ways to just kind of get to zero in spite of the challenges that I've just described. So finally, the stormwater and flood control utility continues to be funded at the $2 million mark. That has not changed since its inception in 2014. So with this utility, we maintain 120 miles of drain pipe, 5,000 catch basins, 350 outfalls, 150 culverts. We have many miles of channels and ditches, which we often refer to as country drainage, very common in Ward 6 and 7. We have 2 levee systems and our much talked about flood control station at Hockenham Road. So our operations are all governed by the conditions of our MS4 permit, which is issued by the EPA. So that's one of those regulatory things that I referenced earlier. And the Army Corps governs our flood control operations. So as fixed expenses within this enterprise rise, it likewise diminishes our ability to invest in capital. Many of our roads and sidewalks are in poor condition due to poor drainage. And this is the utility which actually funds those improvements. So, we talk about the rainstorm that just happened on Saturday. We had multiple, more than 10 locations that were flooded, requiring road closures, and things were sort of still unraveling, various sinkholes developing. It actually triggered the need for us to turn on the flood pumps because the Connecticut rose. So we had to have a pretty full-scale departmental response from an operations standpoint all day Saturday, overnight, and then into Sunday. So that's a level of effort that requires a mobilization, overtime hours, equipment hours, and so on. So we've talked a little bit about the flood control pumps. So we're faced with a roughly $10 million price tag to upgrade those 1930s era flood control engines. We had looked at the BRIC program, which was a federal program through FEMA, and had intended to request funding through that. That program was sort of unceremoniously canceled in a very strongly worded press release by FEMA. So that program no longer exists, and everything has been canceled associated with that program. So we are kind of exploring options on how to best move that project forward. And then I will ask, and this is in response to a question by Councilor Jarrett, we did have an assessment done of the stormwater utility by a third-party engineering firm. It was completed in late 2023. It recommended increasing fees to more closely align with our capital needs, and the mayor and I continue conversations as to how to best address these needs while again providing rate stability and the best value to all ratepayers. So I always like to close by just saying thank you to the employees of DPW who, along with our colleagues in police and fire, work under very difficult conditions 24/7, and they do really good work for this city. So I greatly appreciate their efforts, and we all appreciate your support of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. Okay, well, we're going to go first. If there's anyone in the public on Zoom or in the room that would like to make a question or a comment, please come forward. I guess you could sit in. We'll bring you back. I think, yeah, Ace. Just state your name and.
Ace Taylor, Ward 3, Northampton. Questions for the DPW. Greatly appreciate the work that you do. I know the 24 vacancies has been an ongoing thing. I applied for one of them 2 years ago, didn't get it. I was wondering what incentives have been looked at for helping to fill those vacancies. For example, you mentioned that CDL training is not very common. Something could be offering CDL training in exchange for a 2-year contract contingent on successful completion. Second, I was very excited to see the funding for all the different roads and sidewalks that are going to be repaired and repaved. I was wondering, once the budget is approved, if there is any way to publish what the plan is for that year of what roads and sidewalks are going to be, handled by that. I have 2 follow-up questions from my earlier questions. If this is outside of scope, please disregard. The legal question I had before, I was wondering how that legal line item was split. The $270,000 does not say whether it's going to salaries, overtime, contractors, supplies. It is very vague. For the police supplies, there is a line item for uniforms and other clothing for $57,350. So I was surprised to hear that police supplies also includes clothing. And would appreciate further clarity on that if that is not outside of scope. Thank you.
Thank you, Ace. All right, I see on Zoom we have Tom Bassett. Tom, I'm going to unmute you. Welcome, and just state your name and, oh, it didn't work. Oh.
I think it's working now, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. I appreciate the time to make a comment, and I appreciate the work that everybody does at the DPW. I want to raise my support for hiring positions that can help with the Tree Northampton volunteers. We take on as volunteers quite a bit of work to help the DPW, and we depend on DPW deliveries of trees and mulch and supplies in order to be there at the sites for us to continue the planting of trees in a fairly short window of time in the spring and the fall. So please consider that when you're trying to fill these positions, and I think it helps the city climate-wise and also helps make our city look better to have more trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Will you just restate your name and your city or town?
Sorry.
Just for the record.
I know who
Tom
you are.
Bassett,
Constituent.
Tom Bassett, Ward 7.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Okay. So I'm just looking, anyone in the room? I'm looking on Zoom. Anybody, members of the public to have a question or comment for ideally the DPW director? Okay, if not, let's move on to counselors.
Well, we want to
You want to answer? Sure.
have those
Yeah,
two
yeah, let's,
questions
that's
answered.
fine. Yeah, thank you. Right, that's. Before it's so fresh.
Well, I will remind you, Director Liscalia, the questions, the first question was regarding the vacancies. What have you considered incentives, such as offering CDL training in exchange for a contractual agreement to remain for a period of time?
Yep. So there actually was a time when we trained internally for CDLs. Any CDL licensed driver could, sit in the passenger seat and train an employee. And we actually did that for many, many years. And that's how many of our current employees got their CDLs and they've stayed with us. The state recently changed the rules on that and has made it very difficult to be designated as a CDL trainer, if you will. So there's sort of a whole process now. We are working to address the vacancies through collective bargaining. We have a temporary or tentative agreement that will be posted on the website as soon as it is finalized. We've actually done quite a bit of interviewing, and we have one position that's recently been filled, but are looking forward to a good crop of candidates. I think we're seeing, fully qualified CDL holders at this point. And that feels a little bit different than what we've experienced in the past.
And then the other question was regarding funding for work on roads and sidewalks, repaving, and repairing, publishing a plan, which I assume the question is a timetable for what work is going to be done when.
Yep. And those are all things that are actually funded through the capital plan. So our operating budget funds more maintenance activities. The capital plan funds these large capital projects. I expect that by the end of this month, we will have an announcement of timing and projects and sort of the level of disruption to be expected. I'm working through some details with the gas company right now. They have quite a bit of work that they're doing on many of the streets that we actually want to pave, and that requires some level of coordination. And there actually has been some delay associated with that. So we will be making an announcement about just sort of what the schedule is going to look like once I wrap up some details on this.
Thank you.
Other questions till the end. Okay, counselors. I do want to say that was a good point that Tom Bassett made about the support role that DPW plays in projects, even if it's not front and center, like hanging holiday decorations or the Tree Northampton project. So I appreciated that. Yeah, counselors. Let me just make sure I could see our other counselors. Oh, yes, Councilor Labarge.
Director Liscalia, I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Counselor.
I have 24 right now.
Thank you. How many?
24.
24? So we went from 30 before the last time I talked to you down to 24, correct?
Yeah, well, so we have to combine that number with seasonal. So I have 8 seasonal vacancies and 24 full-time employee vacancies. So that's actually,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And it varies, Counselor. It can vary week to week depending on, retirements or resignations or other factors.
Have you had any not even give you a notice and just up and quit?
Sometimes that happens.
Lovely. Wow. Unbelievable.
We'll let you do the exit interviews, Councilor Barge. We'll scare the pants off.
I think we got a job.
Yeah.
Okay. That is sad. Thank you, Donna, and your staff for everything you're doing. Thank you to Cindy Quinn. You're lucky. She's unbelievable.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yep. Well, I think I saw Councilor Rothenberg and then Councilor Dobbs. Excuse me.
Okay, I'll save my own questions until after you. I think though, did we skip the one from the public about the trees?
The tree.
So I didn't know if the question from Tom.
Yeah.
Exactly. He wanted more support for positions that support the volunteers in delivering materials, or if he was suggesting paying some of those volunteer positions. I think it was the former. Did we get an answer to that? I'm so sorry if I missed it.
My interpretation was he was just saying that, he wanted to emphasize the support that DPW gave the volunteers and wanted us to make sure that, he wants to continue funding those positions. That was my interpretation. Did you have was that yours, Councilor?
Yeah, I saw that as a comment that's a valuable service that Tree Northampton is providing, but they need continued support from DPW.
Would you mind just responding to that and how the staffing for those positions look? If that's the seasonal vacancies or so on.
Right. It can be seasonal vacancies. It's employees within the Forestry, Parks and Cemeteries Division who would provide that support to Tree Northampton. And Tree Northampton does a huge amount of work for us. And it is absolutely imperative that we support their efforts. So this is a Forestry, Park, Cemetery function. And, like all divisions within the DPW, we are struggling with vacant positions within it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I was curious about the sidewalk tractors, which are the machines that plow the sidewalks during the wintertime. The last time we spoke at the City Services special meeting on March 21st, I believe you said that one of the sidewalk tractors was not operational, like it was broken and needed to be fixed. So I guess my question is, how many sidewalk tractors do we have, and is that one that was operational being fixed, or is it fixed yet, or are there plans to fix it?
So we have two sidewalk tractors. One of them is newer and one of them is older. We keep the older one as a backup in case the newer one goes down in an inconvenient time. The older one is not something that we would push into consistent service simply because of its age and the wear and tear on it, but it's important to have as a backup. They will both be fully operational by next winter. But again, I wouldn't say we're running two sidewalk tractors consistently because the second one we have just is not in that place.
Great, thank you. And do you think that there might be plans to get a second, better one at some point?
This sort of goes back to staffing. Ideally, we'd be running two sidewalk tractors and you sort of do the work twice as quickly. I think we need to focus on sort of rebuilding our staff right now, and then we can look at something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. So I just had some follow-up questions to some of your remarks. What would you like to increase the signal maintenance to from 50,000?
I think we should be looking at probably consistently between $75,000 to $100,000 a year because, we have some older equipment that is in need of attention and contractor attention. The price of that work and equipment is expensive. So I think we should look at a more consistent, higher investment in that.
Do the newer, like DOT do those pose any extraordinary maintenance needs that we can't meet and that we have to contract out a lot, or?
Interesting question. Yes, because newer signals, like the signals that were installed on King Street, are more sort of technically or electronically advanced than some of the older signals within the city. So, I mean, it's actually like you need to be a computer tech, and sort of plug a laptop into the thing to troubleshoot it versus the older control cabinets. So while it's always nice to get an upgrade, it's almost like buying a new vehicle, so like the old, 1980s pickup truck is much easier to fix than the brand new electronic one.
But that would still fall within your 75 to 100 figure?
It would, while we sort of ramp up and then assess what our actual needs are.
Okay. I was also wondering if you could speak more to the engineer or engineer assistant shortage and what you think the challenges are there potentially. Why are we having a hard time filling those positions?
I think that we are competing with the private sector. And if you're a professional engineer with a stamp in Massachusetts, you can command a salary that, is significantly higher than the city is able to pay, much like if you're a CDL driver, you can be commanding a salary, in the 40 some odd dollar an hour range. So, in order to compete with the private sector, it's not even really a conversation. So you're looking at sort of a person who wants to work for a municipality, who's willing to sort of accept the pay associated with working for a municipality, and all the municipalities are sort of competing, for that really unique resource. So what's happening is more municipalities are actually pushing to outside contractors, which is putting a strain on, the private contractor engineering firms, and now everyone's competing for the same resources.
Do you have a sense of what would be a more competitive base salary for those engineers or engineering assistants, if it were possible?
I think if you're a registered professional engineer, with a stamp, you're probably, in the mid 150s, 150 to 200 range.
Okay. Is it okay if I keep?
How about one more?
Okay. So one more just to sort of close out this section. And I just really want to be able to get my hands more around, or my arms more around, the cost of contracting all throughout the DPW. And it's hard because, you're almost like your own school committee. I mean, you're running a massive part of our city. So I'm sure it's just so much data to pull from. But how can we as counselors learn more about the costs of contracting so that we can be looking at these kinds of pros and cons around the ways that we're investing our money versus these more competitive salaries and contracting?
I think where you have to start is that there was a historical time when the DPW had full employment and a much higher numbers of skilled labor, and the work was done in-house. And, historically, it's difficult to say, were the demands similar then to what the demands are now? Did we have the tree canopy then that we did now? Was our infrastructure as old then as it is now? I mean, some of the answers are obvious, some of them are less obvious. So I understand your question. The answer to that is, if we were to achieve full employment with this budget, it is difficult to say with confidence that my department could satisfy the community concerns and sort of demands on us for enhanced services, increased services, and timely services that everyone in this community deserves. So I think there will always be some level of contractor assistance that's necessary, but we have to understand that we are paying an hourly rate for contractors that is very different than the hourly rate for our employees. However, it is, when you have an employee, there's like vacation time and there's holidays. Right. And so
I guess what I'm really looking for, and I appreciate the opinion, and that is helpful in the analysis. What I really am looking for is like, how can I get my hands on the data of what we're spending on contracting and the breakdowns?
I mean, you are welcome to a request to review contracts, for whatever, tell us what you want to see the contract for.
And could we see like an expense report on contracting?
What you would see is a financial report that shows, like, here's the invoices. Here's the invoices we paid to ABC company, and they swept that sidewalk for us. I'm just making that up. And you could make a request to see the specific invoice if that's what you were looking for. But you would have to like say exactly what you want.
Okay, we got to wrap it up. So because we have two other departments. So. But thank you. Oh, sure. Yes, you haven't spoken.
It's really quick. So the contractors, though, they don't get benefits, right? A company they contract from, do they cover their benefits, or are we responsible?
They do. So we bid this out and they give us a unit price. Like, I want that tree removed. How much to remove this 12-inch tree? And the answer is $500. And I just made that up too. But I pay them $500. They remove the tree and they pay prevailing wage, which is a legal requirement. They submit certified payroll to prove to us that they have paid prevailing wage, and the benefits are between them and that.
And all the insurance and all their everything is. So I mean, it is, we're probably paying more per job, but maybe in the long run, it's not that much more because we're not paying all the benefits and insurance and the retirement money, right?
Well, it's fast, and I talk about this a lot. We used to paint all the crosswalks in the city in-house. It took us the entire summer. I bring a contractor in here; they do it in 2.5 nights. Paint every crosswalk in the city.
Wow.
So there's fast and there's not fast.
So there's some benefits to contracting also. It sounds like.
There can be, depending on what it is. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, counselors, any other questions before we let the director go?
I had 2 other questions.
Well, I think we've really got to move on. So
would I submit them by email? Would that be all right with the mayor and Director LaScalia? If I submit my 2 other questions by email?
And you would expect a response by tomorrow?
No, I don't need it by tomorrow.
Okay, but tomorrow's the council meeting with the budget.
I understand. I believe the council has until June 30th on the budget.
You're welcome to submit any question you'd like. If it's going to involve a significant amount of work by Director LaScalia in pulling together data that she doesn't already have, then I'll ask you to bring it to the council for a vote.
I think they should be simple. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director. Oh, okay. And before we move on, did we want to, what were the questions that were not for the?
The additional questions were, again, going back to the supply line item for the police department. It was pointed out that there's also a line item for uniforms and clothing. So I think the question was, is that also included under supplies? And then there was a further question about the legal department, whether the money shown there is going just to the city solicitor or to other outside counsel.
Right. I'll do the legal one first. As I said, it also goes for outside counsel. So those are billable hours against that line item.
I think he was saying how, I think they were saying like, how was it split? Is perhaps like not just that it was, but how do we know the split of the
based on the demand for whichever legal service?
It's not like one amount. It's sorry.
Right. So the different attorneys would bill against that line. Yeah, you can see this all in my checkbook.
And then the police.
So yeah, the other police line is used for clothing. I went through and that was also for clothing and for, now I've forgotten the name of the company. And it just carries over. So all of those lines can be used for police supplies.
Yeah, and just to say at this juncture that, we don't cover all the departments. I wish we could actually. It would be really great to talk to them. So if anyone in the public has questions, further questions or questions for departments that aren't represented here, I'm sure, you please email, and I'm sure those department heads or the mayor's office would help you find those answers. Okay, so we are now moving on to central services. Hi, Pat. Director McCarthy's here. Thank you. Welcome. And yeah.
Councilor Maori.
Oh, yes.
I speak before. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Again, as a member of the Pedal People Cooperative, I can't participate in this item due to a conflict of interest, as Pedal People has a pre-existing contract started before I was elected with the Central Services Department. So again, I'll turn off my video and may pop back in for specific questions. Thank you.
Okay. Bye. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Very quickly, I have to say.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We can't hear him on the Zoom. I don't know.
Thank you for telling us. I think the mic.
Okay. Sorry, I thought red was on. So you want me to start over? The Central Services Department oversees building maintenance, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, security, fire detection, custodial, renovations, and construction operations, and capital programs for all city and school buildings. Central Services maintains about 800 square feet of facilities in 29 buildings in the city, which would include City Hall, the Muni Building, Memorial Hall, the police station, Main Fire, Florence Fire, Senior Center, James House, Academy of Music, 6 schools, and the Department of Public Works facilities. Central Services operates the municipal mail delivery system and manages city and school facilities, office, and custodial supplies program. Central Services also oversees maintenance and capital programs for the Gare Garage, which is 168,000 square feet. Excuse me. And the Gothic Street parking structure, which is 52,000 square feet, and approximately 16 city and school parking lots. And our department coordinates maintenance and upgrades to all city streetlights. Presently, between fiscal year 24, 25, and 26, we have about 15 capital progress in various degrees of progress. And that's about it. So, any questions?
I just want to say that Director McCarthy is retiring at the end of this month. And so I just wanted to thank him for all of his service to the city, and we will miss you very much. And congratulations on doing your last budget here.
Yeah, thank you. It's the last time I stood at this podium since the year 2000 in different capacities. But yeah, I'm honored. It has been great to work for the city of Northampton for 25 years. Not the city, but I have been working in the city for 25 years. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You've always been really responsive to my residents' concerns and have gone above and beyond. I'm thinking about all the the really complex
Yeah, the lights.
lighting situation in Leeds. Yeah. Okay. Let's make it good because it's this last one. Any, let's see, let me just make sure I can see the other counselors. Oh, wait, we have to go. I did not go to the public yet. What's going on to counselors? Okay. So is members of the public in the room or on Zoom that have questions or comments for the Central Services Director, Director McCarthy. This is the time. Okay. Let's get this up. And then, okay, counselors. Okay, I see. Okay. Counselor Elkins.
Hi, I don't really have too much of a question. I would just note that Director McCarthy's, in addition to the budget presentation, his big show is also the capital improvement projects presentations that occur earlier in the year. And so I just wanted to say, and also all your involvement in in NESC around those issues. And thank you for your presentation tonight and all your work over the city. I just wouldn't want to pass up the opportunity to say thank you for all of those years of good and hard work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. So last year, I think that the one thing you had asked for that you or that you wish you had was money for an architect.
Yes.
I was wondering if that's still the case, if there's anything new, and if so, if it's still an architect, are you envisioning like a salaried architect that you can consult with often, or just I think you wanted maybe like 30,000 last year for architecture services?
Yeah, we have a small amount. I mean, a lot of the catalyst for getting projects going is to be able to engage in a contract with an architect. Over the last few years, we've developed the house doctor process in which we have actually 10 architectural agencies that we can select from, which has made it a lot easier because with every project, you would need to go through the RFQ process without the list of house doctors. So they're readily available, and as long as we think ahead and include them in the capital projects, it's just nice to have a little extra in the budget to have, to be able to spend on that. Yeah. So
Okay, so that's still the case. It's always nice to kind of.
there's always something. Yeah.
Okay. And
I just have a new ceiling in here too.
I echo everything. I echo everything that Councillor Maori said about how much our residents appreciate you, how much we appreciate you. But I also know that the employees are going to miss you very, very much.
Thank you.
That you're a very respected director. So thank you for being so kind and such a good leader. And congratulations on retiring.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. That was easy. Thank you.
We're going easy on you. Okay, so our last presentation will be Director Weil, CAPA Department, Climate Action and Project Administration Department. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, councilors, for having me, and I'll try to keep it quick so we can, I'll go home. So as you know, CAPA is relatively new, and I came to you guys roughly a year ago with kind of 2 weeks notice of what to do. And so I thought it would be interesting to share with you the agenda that I shared a year ago. Next slide. So this is what I presented to you at the time, and I was just kind of like, okay, how did we do? So hit the animation. Or you just click forward, it should go. Just do one more. There we go. So it's kind of a checklist. So we actually, quite a few checks. So we have quite a few of these that are actually completed. Many are ongoing and are probably going to continue to be ongoing. Some that we're starting, but we haven't really gotten them going. There are some that we explored and found that they were not going to work out for some reason or another. So let's not spend any more time and effort on that. And other ones that we're still investigating. So I can go back and talk about any of these. I'll bring up the decarbonization plan, which NESC is going to be voting on at their next meeting. And that will be the last requirement once it's accepted for us, for the city to become a climate leader, which the important thing is that gives us access to a much larger grant size from the Green Communities grant. So that's the accomplishment there. And the decarbonization plan really did require me and an engineering firm going to almost every single building and facility that the city owns and analyzing it and coming up with a plan that at least says, here's what we should probably be able to do going forward. So it's the basis, hopefully, of a lot of things that we're going to be doing over the next few years. Next slide. So this is a summary of the capital projects that CAPA was involved with in fiscal year 25. And one of the reasons that this total number is actually quite a lot larger than what was reported in the budget summary is because that was done in January or February, and we've actually gotten a lot more done just now. So the one key thing to think about here, so if you look at all of the colors, the only money coming from the city is the yellow. So all the other colors are paid for some other way. So, obviously the big project is Leeds Elementary. The boilers are now in place. But we still have to connect everything and do a bunch of stuff. And we are, as soon as school lets out, we're going to start working on the rest of the project. And that green is a Green Communities grant. There's another form of funding that is not directly utility incentive, which is on-bill repayment. And this basically takes the savings that you are kind of calculated to be getting on that project, and you can pay it back on bill. It's basically a 0% loan. And as long as we make the time frame of the loan to be longer than the payback period, then we have a positive cash flow instantaneously. And so that's how we did it. So in this case, at Forbes, it's a little bit over $1,000 over that 2 years, and then obviously you just get your savings. So you're getting a $1,100 cash flow immediately. Over 5 years, Smith Voc is getting on one project, $3.7 thousand cash flow positive while paying for the rest of the project. And on the lighting project, it's over a shorter period of time, it's $36,500 of cash flow. So again, the lighting project was a really, really big project. Of those, quite a few of these were potential capital projects. In other words, I selected them partly by looking at the capital plans from previous years. The Smith Voc lighting is an example of something that was a capital project, all taken care of by the utility or by the savings themselves. Academy of Music, we just finally got the gutters on the one side, and I'll get into that a little bit more. Next slide. And so this is a different way of looking at the same data. So this is aggregating it all so you can see it kind of in a single chart. So the municipal payback period, in other words, that little yellow bit, the financial payback from energy savings is about 2.4 years. Now, obviously, the utilities, grants, that's all paying for much more. Sorry, the yellow and the on-bill repayment, because we're still paying that on the bill. So that's where the money's coming from. What the savings are, note the difference in the scale. The capital is in thousands, and the project's annual savings is just in dollars. But you can see that there's a fairly sizable savings, and those savings are not always equal to the cap or proportionate to the capital investment. So, for example, we don't get a giant amount of energy savings from the project at Academy of Music. But what we do is we manage the moisture problem. So that rainstorm that Director Lascalia described, that's happening more and more and more. And the gutter system, even when it was perfectly functioning, is simply incapable of handling that level of a deluge. And now we've got the downspout capability to actually get the water off the building and not damage the building, or what it had been doing, actually go into the dirt basement where we got consistent flooding in the Academy of Music. And we're now reduced the energy flow through the Academy of Music to allow us to upgrade the HVAC system when we get the money. But when you reduce energy flow, you reduce drying capacity. So we had to take care of it, but we don't get any financial payback from energy savings out of all of that water management, but it's necessary just as a way of thinking about the different scales. Next slide. So of course, we're doing other things that are a little bit harder to quantify. In terms of the municipal fleet, we've started a vehicle policy that the mayor endorsed that is also in line with the climate leaders' requirements and prioritizes EVs. We are starting the motor pool, and we've already started with the e-bikes. And then we have DC fast chargers that are coming very soon, which will enable our increasingly electrified fleet to charge up quickly and have vehicles in high rotation. We also spent a lot of time in this past year trying to get resources to the public, and we're now kind of going to be really rolling those things out. So certainly CAPA assisted in thinking through the ordinance that you all passed. But we also participated with Mass CEC for getting Electrify East Hampton, Northampton, which is a program that's bringing resources to all of our residents that they can take advantage of. We got a grant for a 3-year community first partnership in partnership with East Hampton and West Hampton. And that's an energy advocate who will basically act as a concierge to make sure that all of the resources, especially we're thinking for businesses and landlords, these kind of difficult to solve energy efficiency customers that need multiple resources, that's who this new employee, Hannah, is going to be mostly serving. We have a grant for an on-street EV charging study so that EVs are available to people who maybe don't have a driveway. And then we're replacing and expanding our level 2 charging for the public. And we started also charging the public, which means they now pay for themselves. We participate in Valley Green Energy, which has gotten our residents a cheaper rate for their electricity and nominally greener electricity. And we've done a little bit of educational activities for the public, again, less quantifiable. So I wanted to highlight again in this kind of less quantifiable service that we have an energy and sustainability officer whose position was part of the city before it moved to CAPA. And one of the big projects that she worked on, and obviously she's doing many things, was trying to really generate accurate energy budgets for all of the departments. So hopefully, with the exception of DPW, where we weren't able to get all of the data in time to actually to do it, to look at projected energy use, projected weather, look at the changes in the rate structures from all the different utilities that we subscribe to, and try to give something that's reliable. And so we put a lot of effort. So we now have a program that we can enter the data next year and it'll go a little faster. And next slide. And Will Coffey, the Chief Procurement Officer, again, a position critical to the city already. And we've spent a lot of time working on improving his processes so that he can actually put more effort into the more challenging things. So we now have a new workflow with a dynamic form that actually educates submitters from all around the city to understand procurement law, directs them to the right pathway, and creates a streamlined workflow for him This has freed him up to do things like actually he helped with is helping with the project management on the Forbes Library project. And so he was able to do a lot of work with the house doctors contracting system, again, by freeing him up to focus on those more challenging things. Next slide. And of course, we've been collaborating because we're only three of us. So everything is collaboration. And so I wanted to highlight collaboration with Smith Voc. And Tim Smith has worked with us. They had some uncontrolled heat pumps and a gas heating system where the heat pumps were actually increasing the total amount of energy use. And we basically came up with a fairly cheap solution to get control over these things, implement it, and we saw the savings that you can kind of see in the energy data from one year to the next. And we've been collaborating with basically the groups who will also participate in our motor pool with the e-bikes. So we have these cargo bikes, and the DCC has been riding them a lot. The public health nurses have been riding them a lot. They can get to some places actually easier. And I think they're having more fun. Next slide. And I guess I didn't put on the slide because I didn't want to spend so much time, but I collaborate with central services daily, hourly, and couldn't do any of the things that we're doing without kind of deeply working with them, and they're really great. So this is roughly what I'm proposing that we're going to focus on this year. So you'll see that we're still having to continue to manage energy costs, improve the buildings, work on bigger projects. In fact, I think we had it easy this past year. We now are going to have bigger projects and probably fewer funding resources. Federal resources are not what they were. So a lot of that. But on the citywide side, we're actually going to be doing a lot more about figuring out ways to help facilitate residents doing really what they want to do anyway, giving them the resources, finding ways that the city can be a help or can get out of the way of something. So those are the things we're working on. And I guess I would highlight, obviously, we're doing the community first partnerships. We've got our energy advocate, but we're also looking at working with businesses to help understand how they can manage their compost requirement, which especially for restaurants is coming down from the state and it's ratcheting down, and they're going to have to figure out how to deal with it, and we'd like to help them get ahead. So this is our budget, which is, not very large compared to all the budgets you've discussed today. But I did want to separate out the motor pool. So the increase, aside from the regular step in personnel, we actually managed to decrease the rest of our operational budget. And the increase from the motor pool is a transfer from other budgets that go with the vehicles that are now going from departments to the motor pool. And I think that is it.
Thank you, Director. Okay, so we are going to first just go to the public and get questions and comments, and then we'll go to counselors. So we might have some. I see. So in the room or on Zoom, I see Tom Bassett. Let me unmute you, Tom. Okay. Oh, let's see. Can you unmute, Tom?
Yes,
There
I
you
just
go.
did. All right, there we go. Thanks.
Thank you.
Wanted to thank Dr. Ben Weil again for bringing a new department into to more full utilization and seeing some of the savings that he's able to get with grants, and with such a small department affect a lot of other departments citywide. So congratulations for that. I was curious, with one thing you listed, municipal projects and then citywide projects, and one of the ones that was listed there under citywide. Can you speak a little bit about the energy coaching, what that's going to mean? Because that was on your horizon this year into next year. Thanks.
Maybe we'll take another comment and then we'll circle back. If anyone in the room, if not, I see Eric Broadbent. Eric, can you unmute? Welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Could you just state your name and city or road or city or town?
I'm going to try to start my video. Yes, Eric Broadbent, Ward 3. Very appreciative of everybody's presentation. I'm here to congratulate Ben and the department for getting up and running their first full year of operation and making so much progress. Particularly in the area of residential decarbonization, which is, as far as I understand it, a second priority. First is to get municipal buildings under control, which you are doing. There was in the expenditures, capital equipment, there was a item that said city funded. So funds came from the city for boilers and potentially other things. And I was curious, so these are not from grant funds, but city capital expenditures that are not covered. Those would have incurred an expense anyway, regardless of whether they are energy efficient or not. Is that correct? Or was the line item for that equipment over and above what would have been spent for fossil fuel equipment, for example? I hope that question is clear. So
yeah. No, continue if you have any more questions, Eric.
Well, the other question I would have is, in general, now that you do have your feet wet on the ground and running, where do you see the biggest opportunities for residential decarbonization, I guess?
Okay, thank you, Eric. Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay, in the room, nobody. Okay, so I'm going to go on. I see Denise. Welcome. Good evening.
Whoops, here we go.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. Denise Lullo, Northampton. And this is more of a comment than a question. I've just been impressed listening to all the departments speaking, in many cases about issues that are being exacerbated by climate change, particularly storms, storm events, and stresses on the water and wastewater treatments, the roads. So I just want to compliment the mayor in a way for having the foresight to create the CAPA office, which can assist all of the other offices in dealing with a lot of these issues. And this has been a difficult time for all of us, and especially people who might have been relying on federal grants. So I just want to applaud CAPA for moving forward in spite of the difficulties and accomplishing all that you did this year. And so kudos to all of you for working through this challenging environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Okay. Anyone else on Zoom with a question or comment, or in the room before we move on? Okay. Yes. Do you want? Maybe we'll start with those questions.
Sure. So the first question is to speak a little more specifically about the energy coaching.
Okay, so energy coaching is something that's developing. here in Northampton, we actually have a bunch of activists, enthusiasts who have gotten themselves some level of training, and they're volunteering to act as energy coaches for their neighbors. And I want to help them do that. And one way that we're doing that is we have, with the Electrify East Hampton, Northampton program and the Community First Partnership, we have a bunch of resources, and we now have a process and a Mass CEC selected home performance contractor who's kind of the first reference, whose job, part of the CEC money, is to have them do outreach to our residents. And when they present, let's say they present a resident with a proposal for weatherization and a heat pump and some other energy efficiency measures, it's often a lot and it's often confusing. And especially in the case of heat pumps, it's different technology and you can get wildly different proposals and wildly different quotes from different contractors. And so one role that the energy coaches can have is to help people understand their goals and help them understand the technology, help them be an owner's agent almost, and look at, be a fresh set of eyes on a quote from those contractors, and often say, no, go back. Let's ask these important questions first. And usually that results in a lower cost, better sized, more appropriate design for that resident. And there's no way, obviously, the city can cover that, even with our a part-time employee. So this is a way to kind of use them as a force multiplier, and try to get them in at the right place at the right time for those residents, kind of in that process. I don't know if that fully answers it.
Thanks. So next question is regarding some of the capital expenses that you listed, and the question goes to whether these are additional expenses because it is an energy efficient initiative, or would these have been expenses incurred anyway, despite the level of energy efficiency?
So it's going to vary. So that's why I'm pulling this slide up. So if we look at the example of the DC fast chargers, right, the first one that has a little yellow on that. Now we're paying a very tiny portion of this big expense, and it's going to actually provide us savings over time. That is the municipal required proportion. In other words, the rest of it, the utility is basically buying us, but we just have to pay that difference. I think you could argue that, well, if we didn't want to pay that difference, we could just not have the DC fast chargers, right? So it wouldn't be an expense that you would incur no matter what. You have to want those fast chargers and be willing to pay something to do it. Now we're paying that out of the revolving fund. So that's funds that are not, that are from SRECs, from the solar facilities that we have. Leeds Elementary, on the other hand, the city is basically paying to replace the steam boilers that failed. And so that's an expense that would have occurred in some form or another. This form of the expense occurred because we knew that we could, or we believed that we could get the grant that we needed to do the rest of the project. And therefore the city had to cover the boiler part, because that's actually something that you cannot get a grant or even a utility incentive for anymore, for gas equipment. At the Academy of Music and City Hall, basically the way we did that is we combined an appropriation for the asbestos removal at City Hall, which was insufficient to cover the insulation and air sealing. So instead, we were able to get a grant. Basically, I parceled it out and made two projects into one grant, and was able to, by turning it into one big project, we were able to fund both of them, whereas we would have had insufficient funds to finish one of them. So that's one where it was incurred, it was planned, it just wasn't sufficient. And then all of the on-bill repayment ones, you could choose not to have that lighting, for example, at Smith Voc, although they had put it on the capital project, so that might have been incurred, but you might have decided, no, we're not doing that. So it was a decision. On the other hand, at least that is paying for itself.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for residential decarbonization?
Yeah, that's a big one. I hate to say it because it's boring, but weatherization. It's cost effective. Mass Save still covers it a lot. Everybody here is eligible for it. The incentives are really good. It's just not very glamorous. You end up with a house that looks exactly the same. And your heating system hasn't changed unless you also add heat pumps. And those are increasingly a really good opportunity. But getting the envelopes of our fairly old housing stock improved is the number one thing.
Okay.
Yeah, counselors, Finance Committee, let me find my counselors online. Questions. I had one. So yeah, I mean, it is really sobering what's happening on the federal level in terms of grants. So is that really, I mean, I guess we don't really know, but it's going to really impact your department if, because part of the savings obviously is what we are able to get grants to cover at this point. Have you been thinking about that, I guess? And what are your thoughts on that?
Everyone's thinking about it. And Massachusetts really has made a commitment to keep going forward. And so there are a lot of increased opportunities from the state level. The utilities recognize that they don't have any choice but to also keep going forward towards decarbonization. And so they're also increasing their opportunities. We're finding a lot of potential. Again, with these bigger projects, though, we might be depending on things like the investment tax credit. And who knows what's going to happen with that. If it remains, or if, for instance, if we're able to get geothermal borers into the ground in time to claim the tax credit before they're able to actually take it away, that's the main thing. So in a certain sense, I'm looking at mostly ground source heat pump situations where if we can act fast, we basically cut our cost by 40% and we get it back. And if we don't act fast enough, we might miss the opportunity.
Thank you. I see Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you. I had a question about, I know how you envision CAPA contributing to our transportation plan. I saw some elements that are coming in the future, the bike ped in fiscal year 27, facilitating car sharing this coming year. And then you had one that didn't work out, the Housing Authority PVTA shuttle. I'd be curious to hear about that, and then if you see other opportunities to collaborate with the transit agencies. One of the projects I've been working on with the planning department that the council will see probably in a couple of months is bus stops and improving our bus stops around the city and signing them and designating them. And so curious your thoughts on those.
So to some degree, I've tried to prioritize things by trying to do the easy stuff first. And what you're bringing up is really, really, really hard. I mean, so I think the answer is I learned that I need to spend a lot more time working with Carolyn Mish in planning, getting to understand PVPC and how they're working on transportation. So it's a much bigger regional situation. And so to some degree, I've kind of like put that on the back burner because it's hard. And so that's kind of more in the development phase where I just need to do a lot more learning. I wouldn't say that the shuttle concept is a bad concept. I don't know that it necessarily needs government participation. I think it's the sort of thing that if it's going to work, it's probably going to be some sort of private sector, maybe public-private partnership approach to making it work. I'm afraid, did I leave? Or I guess in bike ped generally, that's another one where it requires a lot of consensus and a lot of working with the planning director and with the DPW and with I think especially the community at large.
Mhm. And facilitating car sharing, that's something that you have coming up this next year. Could you speak to that?
That's an example of a private sector solution that should be able to just happen. And we need to figure out what are the things that we need to get the city to do to make it easy for them to do it. And so that's one where I feel like I actually can kind of investigate and then come back to the mayor, to city council and say, here are these little tweaks that would help this private sector company do something useful for all of us.
Thank you.
Just more of a comment. I've really appreciated everything you've done this past year and a half, and I've really liked being part of NESC, and I've learned a lot, and I've just amazed at all the things you've done to save the city a lot of money and improve things for us and help us get towards our carbon neutral goal. And even things that, you brought up the level 3 chargers that we didn't really need it, but to have the fleet of electric cars, it makes so much sense because, you can't just plug in a car for 4 hours if you're trying to get it back on the road quickly. So it all seems to work hand in hand. So I appreciate all the thought you put into everything and how you just make it work somehow.
Thank you very much, Councilor Cole.
Councilor Rothenberg.
Thanks. Again, echoing everything everyone said about how useful you are to other departments as well, especially. I also always like to thank Climate Action Now for advocating so strongly for the creation of this, and to the mayor and the council for embracing that and facilitating that. It's been great. Thank you for being frugal. My question for you, as always, is besides everything we're already doing, what do you think we need to be doing for flooding disasters so that we're prepared?
You really want to ask the easy questions. Yeah, this is our big resilience challenge. And so we need to upgrade and maintain the facilities we already have. And you already heard a lot of discussion about that from Director Lascalia. And so we need to start to basically get creative in helping her accomplish those things. And I think that's a challenge for all of us. But all of those facilities were never designed for the types of inundations that we're getting. And so we need to start thinking about water detention structurally throughout the city. And there is not enough publicly owned property to do it on publicly owned property. And there's not enough publicly owned impervious surface for anything we do within the city's own resources or own facilities to have a really significant impact. So we actually had a team of Smith College students do a big GIS project for us. And they studied a bunch of permeability measures and looked at different locations. And they first looked at, okay, just look at city-owned impermeable surfaces. And if we did all the measures, we'd have roughly a 6%, which is not nothing, but roughly a 6% decrease in the storm flow towards those pumps, right? And that's fine, but it's so small compared to the need. And so I think we are going to get to the point where we need to start thinking about ways to enroll all the private property, and really thinking about prioritizing, incentivizing, structuring, all these things that are a challenge, and that we probably need some way to bring in additional expertise from other cities that have done what they call sponge city designs, so that basically the city is able to really absorb the water. And that's, I mean, that's certainly not something I can design by myself. And even if I couldn't make it happen.
Is there a dollar amount that you need right now to be able to do some pursuing on that? Or do you feel comfortable coming to the mayor and having the mayor come to council if she would, when you're ready to fund some work on that?
I think the second process is appropriate. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Counselors. Any further questions for the director? I do want to echo, a thanks for your ingenuity and your nonlinear thinking and creativity. It's really what it takes to approach such a multifaceted, issue. I heard that when you were trying to even calculate how energy savings, and it's like, some of them are clear, and some of them, like the moisture, the water damage, are not always there. So thank you, Director, from me. Yes.
And I will add to that your collaborative nature, not just within the city, but with other communities, with private partnerships. I mean, the city could not be doing this, and your department could not be doing it without that vision for collaboration.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, I think we'll let you go.
Thank you.
I mean, we're not firing you. You can sit down. Okay, so that was our last presentation. I believe now we have to
Yes, I move to close the public hearing.
close the public hearing. Motion made by Councilor Moulton, second by Councilor Labarge. Roll call on that. Thank you.
Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Councilor Elkins.
Yes.
And Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay. So the budget, the FY26 budget hearings are now closed. I think we have to adjourn full council before we can move on to the finance deliberate, or do we?
Because you're recessed for finance, so you're.
Oh, we're already recessed. We don't have, but do we have to close it at the end afterwards?
The full council meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure. Oh, there's Alex. I didn't see Alex. So I was like.
Councilor Mary, so could the full council members be excused for your deliberations and finance procedurally right now?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So we're on to the finance committee's deliberations on a recommendation for the budget, which will be voted on at tomorrow's full council meeting at 6:30 regular city council meeting. Okay. So I can see all the councilors, all the finance committee. So councilors, how are you feeling? Yeah. Well, oh, I'm sorry you're cold. So my feeling is that we are meeting again in less than 24 hours. And so I personally would rather delve into the budget. I have a few general questions tomorrow during But I don't want to, if you all want to have a discussion, that's, a deeper discussion now, that's okay too. But I'm just telling you how I feel. I feel like because we're so close to our meeting tomorrow, that I would rather spend the time. Well, no, we can discuss and issue a recommendation if we could just do a neutral recommendation and get to the meeting tomorrow. If the committee would rather have a discussion now, that's okay too. Yes, Councillor Elkins.
I mean, I'd be prepared to move positive recommendations on.
Okay.
We've heard a lot of testimony and studied, I'm prepared to vote.
Okay.
So I would move positive recommendations for all the orders.
I second that.
Okay, so there's a second by, and also just to say that the department heads are still here if there was any clarifying questions, but it doesn't sound like there might be. Unless Councilor Moulton has them.
No, I just would say for the public's sake that we're now considering the general fund budget of the 4 enterprise solid waste, sewer, water, and stormwater, as well as the revolving funds.
Right.
Those are the 6 orders that are on the floor for a positive recommendation.
Thank you. That's true. Okay, so that was the motion. Was a positive recommendation on the orders before us. Okay, so I guess we need a.
Thank you.
I guess, yeah, so we'll take a vote on a positive recommendation on.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
I'm Councillor Elkins.
I can't hear.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
And Councillor Maori.
No. So that passes with a positive recommendation, and we'll have a deeper discussion tomorrow, which I'm looking forward to with all the counselors. I think that's it for our business. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your time and thought and great questions.
Except
Yes,
to recess
definitely.
finance.
Yeah, so we're gonna, unrecess. Yeah.
Move to adjourn finance?
Yeah, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Moulton.
Councillor Elkins.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge. Yes. Okay. Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
Finance is adjourned.
Okay, so that adjourns finance, and now we need to adjourn full council.
Move to adjourn.
Yes, I'd entertain the motion. I mean, yeah, go ahead. Was that Councilor Elkins?
Yes.
And is
Okay.
there a
Move to
second?
adjourn.
To adjourn.
Okay, so roll call.
Yes.
Second.
And what was the second?
Second.
Sorry.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Elkins and seconded by Councilor Moulton to adjourn. Roll call, please.
Councillor Dobbs.
Yes.
Councillor Elkins.
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Clemmer.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Maori.
yes.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
Councillor Perry. He's still with us.
I don't see him.
I don't see him in the
Okay.
list, so no.
And I don't believe Councillor Rothenberg is within earshot, so.
Okay, so
Okay, that passes unanimously. And looking forward to seeing everyone tomorrow night at 6:30.
Thank you.
thanks, Prez.